Good evening. It's 6 p.m., so I will now call this Committee of the Whole meeting for April 20th to order. I am Sarah Duncan, and I will be the chair this evening. Councillor Richard Novak, to my far left, will not be attending. He was not able to make it. Councillors O'Keefe and Rintoul are here. Councillor Duck, who usually sits to my far right, will be calling in. And Mayor McNeil-Smith and Councillors Garnett are to my right. And there are two additional items of correspondence that are added to, oh, sorry, I'm skipping ahead, the territorial acknowledgement. I'll acknowledge that we are holding this meeting on the traditional territory of the Wasanich Nations, who have stewarded this land for thousands of years before us, and hopefully we will continue to co-steward this land well together. I'll move on to the agenda. There are two new items of correspondence, one for 6A from Better Transit, and one from the Neighbours of Wildflower Place that goes to item 7A. So with those two additions, I will look for a recommendation that the agenda be approved. Mayor McNeil-Smith, and seconded by Councillor Rintoul. I will move on to approval of minutes from our last Committee of the Whole meeting of April 7th.
We need to call the question.
Call the question. Who will approve it? Councillor Grant. I'm going to go with Councillor Rintoul first. All right. Public participation. We do have public participation because it's Committee of the Whole, just for the items which are on the agenda. So if there's anybody in...
Small point of order, Chair.
Go ahead.
If we could just call the question on the two motions.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was doing so well. Approval of the agenda. All in favor of approval of the agenda? That's unanimous. And the approval of the minutes? That's unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to public participation. If there's anybody in the audience who would like to come forward to speak to either of the applications, or I guess any of the three applications and staff report that is ahead on this agenda, you may come forward to speak now. Yep, come forward. And when you come up, just hit the button until it turns red, state your name and your place of residence. The button on the bottom. There you go.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Virginie Smack, and my husband John and I are the owners of the property located 10181 Wildflower Place in Sydney. First, thank you to the chair and committee members for allowing us to present our request. I'm a little bit nervous as it's the first time I appear before a chair and committee members. So actually this morning at 10 a.m. we received a text from our neighbors on the north side, so the rear side of our property, letting us know that they filed the complaint regarding our fence and told us they feel it will kill their cedar hedge. As a reminder, the purpose of our fencing is to provide us privacy and security, as between being a beach access, kayak launching, and off-leash dog beach, it's a very busy street, and people get confused between public property and private property. Dogs are running free onto our property, also leaving their feces all over our yard. And people feel free to walk into our property, going around the initial fence built on Amherst Avenue. So they go all around the fence and going on our patio, picking apples and visiting. So for this point, about our overheight fence, indeed, by the way it is built with the posts and structure, it gets overheight by at the highest 23 centimeters above the limited permitted height. About the complaint that our neighbors feel our fence running along their cedar hedge will kill their cedar hedge. The highest point of our fence on the rear side, on the north side, is 2 meters and 3 centimeters instead of a maximum permitted of 1 meter and 80 centimeters. The other side of their cedar hedge runs along their driveway and gets sunlight. We have photos to support that if you would like to see them.
No, we actually, because you are later, I didn't want to cut you off if you were going to do comments. Is that because you are your own item later, you have a presentation time allotted to you later when we have your item come up. So at this point, this would be.
I thought it was
Yeah,
right now.
no.
I didn't catch
And I
it.
thought when you
So-
started talking, like, well, I'll let her go. But yeah,
oh,
no.
I'm so sorry.
Yes,
I didn't know.
you can
So what should I do? What should we do?
have a seat, and
Thank
then
you
we'll
very
see if
much.
anybody from the public wants to come forward, and they would speak about the other items that are on the agenda. And then
Okay, sounds
anyone who
good.
wants to speak to you in particular, you will.
So you will let us know when it's we
Yeah,
have to speak?
exactly.
So
And there may
sorry
be
about
members
that.
of the public who come up at that time as well.
Yes, for sure.
So, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
thanks. So this will be a second time for public participation, and it'll be clear items 6A or 6B or 8A, if you have any comments from the public on any of those items. And I'll call for a third and final time. Seeing no one, I will close public participation. And we'll move on to a presentation from BC Transit on the Sydney Transit Hub update. And we have Elise Wren and is it Severin Odland as well? And Elise will be mostly doing the presenting. So welcome.
Hello. Hello again. My name is Elise Wren. I'm Government Relations Manager for the Victoria Regional Transit System. I'm actually just introducing Severin today. So we came to see you in about February to talk about our airport service. I don't have an update. Thank you. I don't have an update for you on airport service today, but just letting you know that the Victoria Regional Transit Commission will be meeting on May 12th to talk about airport service, and then I will be returning with my colleague Levi on June 1st to talk to you about the Victoria Regional Transit Plan, the 25-year plan. So we're happy to talk about that at that time, but if you want to say anything to me about it today, I will absolutely hear you and pass those messages along. But today is about the Sydney Transit Hub. So my colleague Severin, who is transit planner for on-street infrastructure, will be joining us and telling you about the design so far and the engagement that we've had with your local businesses. And I will invite Severin to come up and present to you. I will join Severin at the end of the presentation, just in case you have questions that aren't project related. I'd be happy to help with that.
Thank you, Elise, for that introduction, and thank you to the committee of the whole for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Severin Odland, and I'm the project manager for the Sydney Transit Hub. And I'd like to begin with just a reminder that this is still a planning and design project, which means that we are not yet committed to delivery or construction. Instead, what we're doing here is the preliminary planning work needed to strategically position this project so that it is ready for when funding does eventually become available in the future. And I'm here today to give you an update on the public engagement and some of the design revision that we've done over the past year, as well as to provide an update on the project timelines and some next steps that you can expect that the project will be moving through. And today I am seeking the endorsement from the Committee of the Whole to approve in principle the concept revision that I'm going to be sharing with you, as well as approval in principle to continue developing this design. And as a reminder, the Sydney Transit Hub is meant to support the eventual rollout of a Peninsula Rapid Bus line, which is a part of the larger Victoria Regional Transit System's Rapid Bus implementation strategy. And the Peninsula Rapid Bus line is meant to be supported by several infrastructure projects along Highway 17, one of which is, of course, the Sydney Transit Hub. And this, the Peninsula Local Area Transit Plan identified the need to increase local service as both in Sydney and across the peninsula, and also to connect that service with the regional rapid bus line. And it identified Sydney as a key transfer between these local and regional services. Also, as a reminder, the Route 70, which is expected to be upgraded into the future rapid bus service, currently serves the bus stops along 5th Street. And there is a desire to move that service closer to Highway 17, both to improve its service times as well as to service the growing population on the west side of Highway 17. And also, BC Transit is currently conducting our bus layover, where the buses kind of take breaks in between their routes at James White and 5th Boulevard. And there is currently a strong desire to relocate that layover service, both because there is limited capacity for us to conduct our bus layover there, as well as a strong desire from the community and the residents to relocate from that location. And the Sydney Transit Hub provides an opportunity to address both of these problems while also providing the opportunity to increase capacity for local service. Now, the intersection of 7th and Bevan was identified as the preferred location for the transit hub in that 2022 Peninsula Local Area Transit Plan. And preliminary planning for this design began in 2024 with our feasibility study. And in June of that year, Sydney Council gave BC Transit approval in principle for this initial concept that's pictured here on the slide, as well as to continue developing the design. We received funding from the Transit Commission in November of that year to initiate the planning and design project. And in April 25, Sydney Council approved an MOU between BC Transit and the town of Sydney to initiate this planning and design project that I'm here to update you on. This is just an overview of kind of the project timeline. As a reminder, the preliminary planning began in 2024 with that feasibility study, and we spent the past year taking that initial concept to the public and local area stakeholders to get feedback on that initial concept. And we've been taking what we heard and making some alterations to the design based on that input. And so now we are finalizing some of the key design changes and seeking endorsement to proceed. And all this planning and design work will set us up to be able to begin securing funding and begin developing a business case in 2027, which will allow us to explore delivery and securing that funding and final approvals for delivery after that. And then just as a reminder, this is the concept. That was the 2024 initial concept that was approved in principle, and this is what we took to public engagement. And this public engagement took place in a few different formats. We held multiple stakeholder meetings in person with some of the key businesses around the project area in Parking Lot E, including the Mary Winspear Center, the Sydney Business Improvement Association, the Peninsula Veterinary Hospital, and Emergency Services. We also sent a postcard mailer out with project information to other businesses in the area in a more medium radius around that area. And we conducted public engagement in a few different ways. We set up a website with all the key project information and some FAQs. We developed these project posters pictured on the slide and put those up around the project area and at popular bus stops along 5th Street. And we also developed a poll so that the public could identify what kind of amenities they would like to see provided at the transit hub. And BC Transit has also initiated contact with our First Nations partners, and we look forward to continuing to develop these conversations. And in total, all of this engagement was really helpful to us, really valuable to help us refine the design and build support for some of the ideas that we have. We took everything that we heard and summarized it in a public engagement report that I'd be happy to provide if desired, and identified a few areas of support for the project, including the capacity it provides to increase transit service, as well as an opportunity to improve lighting and pedestrian safety at this location. We also identified some key concerns specifically from our project stakeholders. We initially had proposed some turning restrictions at that key intersection, but we heard from multiple stakeholders that there were concerns about worsening traffic congestion, specifically in and out of the Mary Winspear parking lot before and after events. There was also a concern from the Peninsula Veterinary Hospital that needing to maintain access to a very loading ramp that's critical for some of their business functions, as well as multiple cited concerns for pedestrian safety and lighting at that intersection. And so we took everything we heard and tried to digest it into a set of 13 recommendations on how we could improve that design. and integrated it into this revised concept that's shown here. There are a few things I'd like to point out. One is that this new concept has a contiguous pedestrian island that provides more space for public amenities. There is also, we were able to relocate the bus layover further east along Bevan to prevent any conflict with that critical loading zone in front of the veterinary hospital. And we were also able to increase the number of parking spots retained in parking lot E from up to 29 stalls planned to be retained. A few more things I'd like to point out is that, again, we removed that floating island that allowed us to remove any of those proposed turning restrictions, so there will be no changes to how traffic flows as it does currently. We also removed the sawtooth bays on the eastbound side of Bevan to prevent any need for property intake around the Mary Winspear Center. And we are still investigating ways to, and the opportunity to provide washrooms at this location, as well as investigating ways to improve pedestrian safety. We took these design changes back to our project stakeholders and to the public for a second round of engagement. We had some really productive discussions regarding those design changes and the collaborative approach to the project, and we also had time to discuss a few remaining concerns, specifically around pedestrian safety, the need for a planned parking enforcement strategy, as well as continued challenges with on-street parking. And I just want to flag that to date, we have not yet received any responses to requests from engagement from the other tenants of the Beacon Plaza. This graphic here is just meant for illustrative purposes. It is not final, but it's just meant to indicate how the future rapid bus line, the local routes, and the major north-south routes might use this transit exchange. Again, any actual proposed changes to bus routing still needs to be finalized and will not be fully developed until the concept for the transit hub is complete. And any changes will be run through its own, changes to service will run through its own public engagement process before any changes are implemented. And just a few next steps for you to be aware of. Again, in 2026, BC Transit is going to continue working with Town of Sydney staff to progress this design. And today we are here to obtain support in principle both for these design changes as well as to continue along this path. And we're happy to continue updating Council and the Committee of the Whole as desired, and we are looking for some clarification on how you'd like to continue to be engaged moving forward throughout the rest of the design milestones. And again, all of this planning and design work that we're doing in 2026 will set us up for, likely in 2027, to begin preparing that business case, starting looking to secure that funding, and getting those final approvals before we move forward into delivery. And so based on the information I presented to you today, BC Transit would like to request the endorsement of the Committee of the Whole to improve in principle the changes that we've made to this design concept, as well as endorsement in principle to continue developing this project design along its milestones. And that is all the information I have for you today. Thank you so much, and I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you. Now, before I turn it over to questions from my colleagues, Elise had invited everybody to ask questions about the VAA route. I'm going to discourage that and keep us on this topic. And then we will, I guess, hear back later. I know the mayor is in contact and is dealing with that. And so hopefully after the CRD board, if this goes back to the CRD board and we hear about it again, we'll ask you questions specifically about that route then. I know there'll be members of the public, as we have a letter here, who are interested in that as well. But we'll try to separate those for today. So I'll look to see if there's any questions from my colleagues. Okay, Councillor Rintoul and then Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I'm really pleased that you seem to have spoken to some of the significant organizations that have expressed concern. So thank you for meeting with them and then circling back to them with where you're at on this. Could you go back to maybe the potential bus routing slide? And you've indicated you've eliminated the restricted turning. I think the exit from the Mary Winspear Center was going to be preventing, so if you're at the front of the building where the little roundabout is at the Mary Winspear Center, people exiting the Mary Winspear Center at one point were going to be prevented from going straight. They were going to be have to turn to the right. With that pedestrian island removed, has that changed?
Through the chair, thank you for that question. Yes, traffic will continue being able to flow through this intersection as it does today. There will be no alterations.
Okay. And what is the route of the buses accessing the transit hub? Like, I see your routes going past the transit hub, the proposed transit hub on your map here. Where does the bus access? Where does the bus exit the transit hub?
Through the chair, perhaps it would be more useful for me to pull up this clearer picture of the concept. Here, the buses will be flowing westbound on Bevan and stopping in this bay on the kind of the south side you see of the exchange,
Yeah.
and then turning also. There'll be one bay there and then one bay around that turn onto 7th.
Okay.
They'll be stopping in that kind of direction, that flow, coming up from Bevan up and turning onto 7th. And then there's also 2 additional bays for those eastbound routes.
Okay. Forgive me. What is the green coloring on here?
Through the chair, thank you for that question. The green coloring is meant to indicate landscaping and differentiate from the blue, which is pavement or pavers to be determined.
Okay. And so you're claiming some of the parking area for these bus stalls, essentially, the existing parking area. And so in doing so, we would anticipate less congestion with the buses coming and going from Bevan, for example. Is that what you're looking for here? Was that your goal?
Through the chair, yes, that is the design of the transit hub is meant to reduce any kind of conflict or competition between cars and buses. And just perhaps a reminder is that all of the routes that currently plan to be serving the transit hub currently flow through this intersection already. They just don't stop.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And if I may, Chair, just one last question around the suggested use of the word endorse, which a quick Google search reminds me that endorse means declare one's public approval. Do you think we're at the stage where we're declaring one's public approval? Or should we be looking for another word other than endorse at this stage?
Through the chair, we are happy to collaborate with the council or committee of the whole as you would best like to be engaged. We really seek your direction.
Thank you, through the chair. We did struggle with what wordage to use for this because the Victoria Regional Transit Commission will want to see that Town of Sydney is engaged with the process and still wanting to see the process move forward. So we are happy to use any sort of terminology that you'd like.
I heard during the presentation approval in principle. Your words, not mine. Does that perhaps suffice?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor O'Keefe, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. So we covered the entry or the exit out of Mary Winspear. That's great. What I was trying to, a few things I had questions on. You talked about other amenities suggested. What were the other amenities that were suggested by the input, and how are you proposing to deal with those?
Through the chair, thank you for that question. There were several amenities identified by the public poll as preferable, including a public washroom, benches, placemaking, a map of Sydney, and there are a lot of more work is required to be done to determine exactly what those are. That is kind of the detailed decisions that we plan to develop more in the 60 and 90% design stages. Right now, what you're seeing is how we identify roughly 30% completed design, where we're focusing on the major structure and the layout of the exchange, of the transit hub rather. And then we'll be working closely with the Town of Sydney staff to identify what kind of amenities we are able to provide and how those will look.
Okay, one of the things that we had provided feedback on last time is wanting to see a bike storage and drop-off zone. So I didn't see anything in this about that, and that was one of the, I think, major things that we wanted to see. So where are we with that?
Through the chair, yes, great point of clarification, absolutely. One of the intended purposes of a transit hub versus a transit exchange is to facilitate not only changes between routes, but also changes between modes. And so having that secure bike parking and storage capacity for cyclists to transfer onto transit is definitely a key utility of the transit hub that we plan to explore, but more work is needed to be done to exactly identify how much secure bike parking we're able to provide, in what manner, and where along the pedestrian plaza it will fit the best.
Okay, so nothing yet. I guess, so when I'm looking to sort of endorse or provide support for things moving forward, and when I looked at the revised concept, there's only really 5 bullets here that talk, and do address some of the changes, things concerned, but there's, a lot of other things that aren't mentioned there. So, I would, before being comfortable to endorse or go forward, it would be nice to see sort of a more thorough listing of the things that are going to be part of the revised concept. And that was a little bit difficult for me to discern, just because I know that there was the 13 items, the summary and proposed actions, but it wasn't clear to me from that whether those things were part of the revised concept, or those were things that just came out of a round of an engagement, but I didn't see them translated into the revised concept. So just some clarity on that would be helpful for me. One of the things that was mentioned was concern about to consider, and I think that was in these the 13 things, was considering options that will maintain emergency response times. So I'm wondering if you can provide a little bit more information there about what those concerns were and how those are being addressed in the revised concept.
Through the chair, thank you for that question, the opportunity to clarify some of those points. Many of the recommendations that you reference on those 13 recommendations, some were best fitted for this 30% concept, where we're removing those turning restrictions and relocating that layover bay. Those are the ones that I identified, as well as many others that were provided that would be explored at these later design milestones when we're getting into more specific design choices, like where and how much bike parking to provide, for example, as well as what kind of placemaking, where is there capacity for a public washroom, all these other things that we need to figure out now that we have kind of the basic landscape identified at this 30% milestone. So we will look forward to the opportunity to continue engaging you along that design development. In terms of the emergency services, one of the sources of that concern was because of those turning restrictions at the intersection of 7th and Bevan, that it would kind of redirect traffic more out of the southern entrance and exit of the Mary Winspear parking lot, which would then increase competition with the emergency services like exit times. And so by removing those turning restrictions, that was done partly in process, not only engaging with the Mary Winspear Center, but also with emergency services to make sure that there wasn't any increased competition along that southern entrance.
Okay, thank you for that. The other thing that caught my eye was number 12, which was parking will continue to be monitored throughout the design process, ensuring that reallocation of vehicle parking space to other public uses is beneficial to the community. I need a bit of a translation on what does that mean exactly?
Through the chair, thank you for that question and opportunity to clarify. The intent, I think, of that recommendation is that there are, of course, many competing factors when we determine how much parking to maintain or to repurpose for on-street parking. And so, for example, looking at the on-street parking that is currently along Bevan, there's competing considerations that we're weighing and trying to engage with the stakeholders on balancing the need for increased bus layover, as well as the need to maintain access to loading ramp, but as well as also a desire to maintain as much on-street parking as possible. So these are many factors that we're considering when we're making kind of the design choices and altering the design based on the input that we receive.
Okay, and just one more, so I'll leave something for Scott to ask. But the other thing that caught my eye was about, it mentions the need for a parking enforcement strategy. And so what is that related to? Is that related to concern about people parking at Mary Winspear that shouldn't be, or parking in the bus layover lanes, or what does that refer to?
Through the chair, great question. That was part of came up in our re-engagement session with the Mary Winspear Center and the Business Improvement Association, which is that there was some concerns around people who will be using the transit hub, parking and leaving their cars there for long amounts of time. And we had a discussion on a need to develop a strategy to perhaps an parking awareness strategy that is the intended purpose of the McTavish parking ride, for example, as well as other things to make sure that when people begin using the transit hub, that they're aware that this is not intended to be a park and ride. That is actually the purpose of the McTavish and park and ride, and that is the best place to perform that function, as well as, yes, any changes to what was previously on-street parking to either layover or to loading zone designation is well communicated to make sure that there are no conflicts with any of the changes that we're making to this area.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you. Councillor Garnett, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Thank you, Ms. Brennan and Mr. Odland, for your presentation and for being here to take questions. I appreciate it. And some of my questions have been asked. Just looking at the Sydney Transit Hub project and its role in improving local service. So I completely understand the 70, the trip time goes down both directions. I get that, but I'm just wondering if you could expand on or explain how this will help improve the local service throughout the rest of the community.
Through the chair, thank you for that question. There are a few ways in which that will be supported by the transit hub, part of which is the ability for increased layover, which is essentially kind of like a shock absorber, where all of those buses that will come through increased service levels will have capacity to, that's what we call layover in between their routes. So having increased ability to have bus layover in Sydney is an important capacity needed to improve those service levels, as well as adding bays on this, the eastbound side of Bevan, right along the Mary Winspear parking lot there, and then also up on Beacon. Having these extra bays provides our transit service planners a lot of more flexibility in terms of how much service they can provide in the area and also through this intersection.
Thank you. And it's great that picture's up there, because I comments, questions, I'm not sure which they are, but to get into the minutiae, and I realize this is just a concept, but as I looked at this diagram and I was looking at, and I appreciate you moving the bay from in front of the veterinary hospital. It's pretty important for them to be able to access their ramp for their patients. But as I was looking at that, I noticed the town has recently painted all that line so it's now available parking. And I'm looking at 3 buses there, and that's an area where there's a lot of medical and dental offices. So just a comment about in terms of on-street parking availability and what the community uses that area for. I'm not sure if this is what it's going to look like in the end, but just a thought concept that if we take up all that space, given what the uses are in that area, that might be a problem. From a safety perspective, and I walk through this area multiple times a week, and the one thing that I notice is the bus that's sitting the main bus where you get on 7th. I could see that, depending on the size of the bus, causing visibility issues for people coming through the lane, and many cars access that left turn lane out of there, and the visibility from vehicles coming straight through there could be an issue. And people tend to just, they go and they don't tend to look, and so you might take that extra half step to look because there's your visibility is impaired. I could just see that as a potential issue, just something I've noticed. And the two on the east side by the Mary Winspear lands, the crosswalk. So people leaving from Mary Winspear to cross straight across to where the contiguous space is. I could see that also be an issue for the traffic heading to the west on Bevan. Not seeing a pedestrian until they're past where the bus would be, depending on the size of the bus again. That could be an issue. And also for vehicles turning left out of the employee parking lot down below, depending where that bus furthest this way is, and if they're turning left into an oncoming traffic's going around the buses. These are just things that, from a person who uses the space regularly, I could see becoming an issue in terms of visibility and pedestrian and vehicle safety for that matter. Other than that, I'll leave it there for now for anybody else. Thank you.
Mayor McNeil-Smith, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation and taking questions. A few questions following up colleagues. One is, I see that the number of layovers, when you look at the initial concept, there was 2 buses in the transit hub and 3 layover buses. In this, we're seeing 2 buses in the hub, if you will, but we're seeing 6 in the layover. We're seeing the 3 on the east side, or on Bevan. We're seeing 2 outside the Mary Winspear parking lot, and that is a layover on Beacon Avenue?
Through the chair, thank you for that question. There, point of clarification, I do recognize that these are not distinguished between bus stops and layover bays, but on Beacon is intended to be a bus stop, and one of the 2 eastbound Bevan spots are also intended to be a bus stop. So there would be a total of 4 layover bays, 1 which is on the eastbound side of Bevan, and then the 3 further on Bevan behind the Save on Foods.
Sorry, I missed which is the 4th layover bay?
The second, yeah. The
second one outside the Mary Winspear parking lot?
Yes, the one closest
More
to the
east?
roundabout.
Or the
Yeah.
one closest to the roundabout?
But some of these specific bay assignments, or some of the will not be finalized until the concept is set, and we work with our service planners to identify exactly which bays will be used for what function. But during our kind of preliminary discussions to make sure that they have the capacity that they need to provide the service, that is what we've been discussing.
Okay, thank you. When we saw the initial concept, when it first came to council about a year ago, seeing 5 bus stops and layovers was a lot for what is a very busy, somewhat congested part of the community. Can you explain a little bit more for the rationale? I've heard you say in answer to some of the other questions that an increased need for layover. Can you speak a little bit more from going from 5 to 8 bus stops and layovers?
Through the chair, yes. A few points is that the need for the increased layover is partially intended to support relocation from James White and 5th to the extent that that is possible. Again, those are service changes that will be finalized later in the design process. And we have added the stop on Beacon at request through engagement with our service planning team to provide them more flexibility and how they kind of change service to better utilize the transit hub. And also, perhaps just a point of clarification is that although all of these bays are showing buses in a somewhat permanent fashion, again, all of the routes currently flow through this intersection and will really only be staying, with the exception of the layover spots where they will be taking multi-minute breaks, will normally only be occupying these spots for about 30 seconds to 60 seconds at a time.
How many of the 8 may be occupied at a given time? Has that been?
Through the chair, thank you for that question. I will have to get back to you on the details of that. That's something that my colleagues in service planning, I think, would be better equipped to answer, but I'd be happy to ask them in return with that information.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, going from 5 to 8 just gives the perception to me that this is going to be busier. And so, further to Councillor Garnett's comment with regards to the driveway access out of the town parking lot, the larger mall area, onto 7th. I would just ask both transit but also staff to consider the implications of closing that. It's already a challenge in our community, and I just think it should be reviewed. So I'll leave that as a comment. I'm not going to make a motion to that effect, but my next question is through the transit or staff, do we recall how many parking spaces are in the town parking lot now?
Through the chair, yes. There are currently 37 parking spaces in parking lot E.
Okay. And so in the initial concept, it went down to 12. This revised concept just says more parking retained, so the number of parking spaces isn't ascertained yet?
We estimate based on through the chair, we estimate that there will be 29 parking spaces retained with this reconfiguration.
Thank you. In coming to furthering some questions with regards to amenities, I think council has expressed interest in what the possible amenities may be, appreciating the limited or the variety of uses that will be on this site. Is it and so we understand that this is 30% design. The concept has actually changed with that 30% design to some degree. When you come back at 60% design, do you contemplate the possibility of other concept changes, or do you pretty much see this layout but just further design, particularly with regards to amenities?
Through the chair, thank you for the opportunity to clarify. Certainly the concept changes the most at these early design changes or design stages where we're reconfiguring the actual shape and function of the intersection. And moving forward from 30 to 60 and 90, the changes get much more granular. So there may be some changes, for example, on the shape of the corners to make sure that they're turning movements for trucks that are loading can cut through. We might need to round some corners or adjust the sight lines based on all the kind of considerations that we're talking about. But at this stage, this is what we are expecting the major concept to not change.
Thank you. My last question is sorry, I'm going to pass. I didn't note my last question. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. I guess seeing no further first-time speaker. Oh, Councillor Duck is there. I should have checked online first. Go ahead, Councillor Duck.
Thank you, Chair. If I may ask a question, just to clarify the bus, what has been indicated as the bus stop on Beacon. I'm a little concerned about what service that's providing, because it's, yes, there's a tourist information center there, but there's major retail across the street, which currently doesn't have any crosswalk access to come across Beacon to get to that bus stop. So I'm just trying to get a clarification from the presenters as to what service would that offer to patrons, and where would they anticipate them coming from?
Through the chair, thank you. That's an excellent question. And looking at how these bays are assigned and how pedestrians are expected to move through this transit hub is some of the the areas where further work is needed to define. Right now, we are at the 30% stage, are looking for identifying what kind of capacity we'll be able to provide with the transit hub, that we'll continue engaging with our transit service planning team on how these bays will actually be assigned, and then also where we're looking at that pedestrian flow, which is why we indicated that there is more work to be done in terms of ensuring pedestrian safety, identifying exactly where they'll be moving throughout the transit hub, and then where to put those key pedestrian safety treatments.
Thank you. Yeah, that's my concern, is that you're going to force a lot of people to consider crossing Beacon from the retail that's to the north of it, and causing some potential pedestrian hazards. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, follow-up question, Mayor McNeil-Smith?
Thank you. My question was staying with amenities for a moment, and that is in one of the early presentations to council, and through discussion on amenities, it was indicated that while this BC Transit will be looking for funding from the province, and a business case, we understand in the process a business case will be completed and then looking to fund. But it may be the case where, depending on what the nature of the amenity or the number of amenities, the town may be asked to participate on a cost basis. When do we see that at the 60% or the 90%? When, if that's the case?
Thank you, Your Worship, through the chair. So these are matters that we would talk about as we refine further, as Severin mentioned, through 60 and 90. And we would set expectations of what that looks like. And then once we get funding secured and through into the implementation phase, then BC Transit enters into a maintenance agreement with the town of Sydney, where we negotiate what that looks like in terms of what BC Transit's responsible for, what the town is responsible for, and what the province is responsible for.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. For a second time speaker, Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. Going back to, this slide again. It would be great. Well, maybe when you come back next time. It's hard to figure out, what's layovers, what's bus stops, and exactly where they are. Don't want to repeat what others have covered, but I'm still puzzled about what looks like a bus stop that is on, I guess, 7th, like if you're coming straight out of Mary Winspear Centre, and on the right side, there's that gray rectangle that appears to be on 7th, right beside the hub. So is that on the street, or is that in the hub? I'm just trying to figure out if I'm understanding that correctly.
Through the chair, yes, you are understanding that correctly. That is expected to be where the rapid bus stop would be, to have a designated bay to not be mixed up with other routes. And the intention is that there would be no through traffic in terms of that straight and right turn lane until after that bus bay. So there would still be the same kind of traffic lane that would not compete with that bus bay when it's stopped there for passenger boarding or alighting.
So it's a temporary, so it's not, so the number 70 is not going into the hub. It's on the street.
Correct. Sorry, through the chair. That is correct, but there will be for example, along the westbound Bevan stop, where it is also kind of on the south side of that island, is meant to be out of it is a pull-out lane, essentially, so the bus and the cars will not be competing for that lane access. as well as right there on the side that you're referring to on 7th. Right now, there are pylons protecting that corner turn. So that's where the bus would be currently, and that's cars are not currently able to drive through that side, the right side of that lane. So the through traffic will still be maintained along that left side.
Okay. It just puzzled me because I thought one of the main reasons we're doing this hub is to accommodate the number 70 bus, but it's not going in there. It's gonna be on the street, so, okay. And I guess I have to say, I'm glad Councillor Rintoul brought up the comment about what does endorse mean? Because and one of my colleagues asked about how things would improve here. And I guess I'm still seeking some clarity in terms of, one of the things that when this was first reviewed was about, we wanted to encourage mode shift. So we wanted to get people to use the bus more. And the numbers that seemed, the number 70, the fast bus, was the focus for this. And so I presume, the target for that is probably commuters, people who are wanting to get downtown to work quickly, or others who have appointments there. But you mentioned in your previous comments that this is not a park and ride. So people aren't going to be able to park their car there. In fact, there's concern that they might at Mary Winspear. So I'm wondering how we anticipate encouraging that mode shift in Sydney based on what you know about the population here. And so when I think about when I was working downtown, I work in the north end of Sydney. So if this had been in place, this hub, I probably wouldn't use it because it's difficult to get to. So I would still have to, it's not within walking distance. There's no place for me to leave my car and get on the bus. And I would still have to depend on the 72 or one of the other buses to come along. And then I'd have to take that bus, down to the hub, then get on the bus and go. And so it still seems to me like there's some barriers there. And I just wonder how you've all thought that through in terms of how you anticipate this, how this will improve that mode shift.
Thank you, through the chair. So really, at the end of the day, we need to remember that this is infrastructure that's going to bring those changes. So when Severin showed you that proposed routing, he reminded you that that's what we think might happen, but we will be coming back to you on June 1st, where we're talking to you about the 25-year plan that talks all about routes and network restructure. And so this infrastructure allows us to bring you forward 25 years. So it allows you, you're thinking, I know you're thinking right now of where the 70 runs right now, and if we have infrastructure that can move away from deeper into Sydney, that layover area, and bring it to this hub here, you can have more coming in and out of Sydney. Also, you'll learn when we come back in June more about our plans for Rapid Bus. So Rapid Bus is that 15-minute all-day service. There's one right now called the Blink Rapid Bus, which is our first Rapid Bus that goes from downtown to Langford. Part of our plans is a Rapid Bus for the spine going to the ferries. So this infrastructure plan will help us bring the peninsula into downtown with that Rapid Bus spine. But we're not able to show you the routing right now because this is a future project.
Okay. I get the idea of trying to create infrastructure, but how it's going to work in Sydney to get more people to drive or to get from where they are in most of the neighborhoods to access that number 70, it's I'm not seeing it. So it would be good to have further clarity on that. If at some point you're looking for council to support this and just say, yes, this is absolutely a good idea. For me, I would need more information on that, because when I look at this, I'm still looking at the, there was reference made that this was the number one option. Well, the number one option, maybe for BC Transit, was this, but the number one option from the citizen survey was having something on the highway, and that was 40%, and this option was 30%. So I'm still kind of looking at that. So for me to endorse this in the future, I need to see a bit more, this rounded out a bit more to see how it actually would work for Sydney. So thanks for that.
Okay, thanks. And I will, I guess, take my privilege now as the last first-time speaker to ask my questions. I guess first I'd like to thank you for trying to work with this problem. Sydney is fully built out. Transit hubs need a lot of space, and this is a really difficult problem. I am perhaps one of maybe 2 people in the tri-municipal area who are in elected government who do ride the bus. I don't own a car. And so I perhaps understand the problem better, but it also means that you have an upward hill to explain to people who don't use transit as a mode, who uses transit, how they use transit, and why they use transit. And so I'm going to kind of turn to the letter from the Better Transit people, because I know Sydney's elderly population who are dependent on the bus, the reason they're dependent on the bus is they do not have cars. So I understand why you would not prioritize park and ride. Or be concerned about that. We're not concerned about getting people with their cars here. We're concerned about people who don't have cars. And for working class people who are in the renter class and again, don't have cars or would like to be able to leave their cars at home entirely. And so that doesn't concern me as much. I guess what does concern me is the rapidly evolving landscape around fuel prices, which has been in place for a number of years and is only accelerated. And so I know your previous 5-year plan had fuel prices that were much different than they even are now. And as you're doing your 25-year plan, there must be greater uncertainty about how to make that work. So I'm wondering if you can get funding for this over the next 2 years, would this be scalable if, say, for example, nobody needed that parking lot anymore because if anyone's getting anywhere, it's on a bus? This originally had buses moving through the parking lot and the hub being inside. Now I see this blue area is all pedestrian, and that's why the buses are all on the street. There's no through traffic there. So is this something that if an agreement in principle was made, funding was secured, and greater demand was required and less demand for that parking lot, I think as the mayor asked earlier about whether this was a priority for us to keep that, is that something that could be changed given how much work has already been done, that it would be easier to change that on the same construction timeline, or would that kind of just throw the whole thing up if things really changed a lot?
Through the chair, thank you for that question. One of the things that we think about when we're doing these types of infrastructure project planning is that it does take many years for us to develop this type of project and get it delivered. And so we often are thinking about it at BC Transit in those short, medium, and long-term horizons, and what will give us the flexibility not only to continue providing service right now, but also anticipation of the service plan over the next 5 or 10 years, as well as also what kind of foundational changes we can make to support the eventual transit plans of the next 25 years. We often think of the lifespan of some of these infrastructure projects as between 15 and 20 years, and so that's normally what we kind of plan for, and then but we are always trying to keep in that future flexibility and making sure that these are able to be, if not future-proofed, essentially modifiable to support the expanding service that in that longer-term horizon.
Okay, that's fast. hard infrastructure with only a 15-year potential. So you're saying if was getting to the end of that 15 years and it needed to expand, that's something you kind of have in mind already, though it's not fully fleshed out. I'm worried about putting a lot of work into building something that in 15 years' time, or probably even a couple years after it's built, is obsolete. I think it would be your concern as well. And so I'm just wondering how much flexibility around that we have.
Through the chair, and perhaps an example of kind of the considerations we're making that we're not incorporating into this design is put spaces for layover outside of this project area for in the future where we do need more than 4 spots, where further, for example, perhaps further east on Bevan, could we build more layover, starting to think about kind of the real estate and what even services are kind of on these other parts around the project area that would then allow us to change how the bays right here in the closest part of the hub are used. So that's kind of maybe one example of how we're thinking about how eventually we can make sure that there is capacity to expand the scope of kind of where we're starting to focus this key transfer between rapid bus and local service, and making sure that there is growing room, essentially.
Okay, thank you. So one of the amenities, and Councillor O'Keefe asked about it earlier, I think was maybe you only asked about bike racks, not bathrooms, but the bathrooms are for the drivers. And I believe that currently they have an agreement for use of a bathroom that was built for them in the building at James White. And the next closest one is all those buses that carry through to the ferry terminal, which is a high in demand bathroom. You see those guys just running, trying to make it because there's so many. So I imagine that would be the same thing. There's a lot of buses, a lot of layover. If a bathroom space cannot be fit into this one, is there a potential to keep the space on the James White for the bus drivers to use, or would that space or all those spaces just assumed to be going away, or is there still some flexibility around making sure they continue to have a bathroom?
Through the chair, that's a great question, and that is exactly some of some of the decisions that we're going to be drilling down on in the 60 and 90% stages. We've already been talking with our operations team on the tenure that was secured through that washroom on James White and 5th to see if it would make sense for us. If we do relocate layover, should we still maintain access to that? Or is there potentially opportunity to access a washroom in Beacon Plaza through that breezeway? Or is there some other option of delivering an operator washroom that's built? These are all different options that we've identified as issues that need to be resolved, but that is exactly the kind of more determined decisions that we'll be making at these further design milestones.
Okay, thank you. And again, this is much of the 60 and 90 design, but I know because the transit riders who are part of Better Transit, I'm sure will be watching and want to understand before we kind of really approve in principle of these things. Concern about particularly people, the elderly, people who can't drive a car anymore because they can't see well enough, and making sure that people can really understand which directions they're going. Right now, we're fortunate in Sydney, if you're going north, the bus is pointing north. And if it's going south, it's pointing south. Here it looks like do I understand correctly that if the bus is heading west, it will be going north, and if it's coming east, if it's heading eastbound, it will be then going south? Or is it the other way around?
Through the chair, the preliminary concept in terms of transit service, which again, more work needs to be done to finalize, is that, maybe I'll move to this, is that the Route 70 on both north and south would route through and use this same bay. And so there are some of that wayfinding measures that is definitely a top consideration in terms of how we're designing the use of that pedestrian plaza. And yeah.
Okay. So people will have to be able to tell based on the bus saying it's 70N or 70S, or the stop itself. The stops are going to be separated. I guess I'll just like clarify that if it's the route 70 going north up to the ferry, or does the 70 now terminate in Sydney?
No, this will be just one stop along. It's the Route 70's terminus will still be downtown and at the ferry.
Okay.
But right now, again, this does need to be finalized, is that the Route 70 would have its own designated stop for both north and south routes. But exactly if that is going to be the final routing, and then if so, what kind of wayfinding measures we need to do to make sure that that is still user-friendly, absolutely, are those kind of decisions that we'll be making further along.
Okay, so you haven't decided yet whether it would be the same stop or two separate locations for north and southbound. You haven't decided yet. Okay, thank you. I think that was kind of the main public concern there. How long would construction take? It says start in 2027. Is this a one-year project, an 18-month project? When would service likely start?
Through the chair, thank you for that question. I think I will need to get back to you to make sure that I am giving you a good answer on that.
Okay. Not a quick answer, not a quick project, I guess. Okay. And my final question, Councillor O'Keefe alluded to this as well, I believe, about the capacity and how this was increasing capacity. So we hear from people on the west side, as there are many people there who need to get to their medical appointments as well, and the bus service is much more infrequent. And I saw your slide says that you had consultation with the First Nations as well, and since many of the reserve lands are on that side, I imagine what the major thing you would hear over there was increase our service. Going faster from Sydney doesn't help us if we can't get to the hub. And so the answer I heard was that this would help increase service because it allows all these additional layovers and allows us to have more buses running simultaneously through the area. So if we were to approve this in principle, will that be something that follows in time, or is that part of the plan, is that because this gets built, that allows us to do that as the next step for sure, or is that just like it allows that potential maybe later? How much should these people feel that this would help them, I guess is what I'm asking.
Thank you, through you. Yes, so we would have unapproved routing through the new hub, but then we would look to expand service over X amount of years. So how the transit system works through the Victoria Regional Transit Commission and through BC Transit is that every year we ask the province for an additional span of hours to expand our services. And all of the asks to the province get bundled all together as a big number for the province, goes to the province, and then at budget time in February, we find out how much is allotted to transit, and then we piece it out from there. This year, we did not have expansion for transit in our provincial budget. And so every year we make that ask and work closely with the province to expand services. So we would do the routing that we can within our existing envelope right when the transit hub opens, and then we would continually be looking to improve it through the years, subject to funding.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll look and see if anybody who has not spoken for a second time had further questions. No? Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time, and I will look for somebody who would like to make a motion here. Go ahead, Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Number one, that council approve in principle the revised concept plan for the Sydney Transit Hub, and two, that council approve in principle the planning and design work to continue developing designs and cost estimates for the future Sydney Transit Hub to support a business case and future funding application. Before going to looking for a seconder, Chair, while I will look to motivate on these two motions, I will also have a motion arising. I don't want to include it just yet, but
Okay, I'll look for a seconder. Nobody's going to second for discussion?
I'll second for
Second for
discussion.
discussion, thank you.
thank you. So thank you very much for the for the public engagement that's occurred to come to this revised concept. There are some significant changes in this concept. So we appreciate the presentation of it and the and taking the questions, and thank you for your work with staff. That's been important work along the way, and will continue to be important. I have a question through you to staff, Chair. Knowing that staff have worked closely with transit on this concept, staff to this point are comfortable with these concept changes. For example, a transit stop on Beacon Avenue in that particular location.
Good evening, through the chair to the mayor. So yes, first I'd like to say that BC Transit has been very forthcoming and has been a good process working with them, and we've been satisfied with the information that's been presented. I appreciate all the points that council has raised. I look at this as endorsing or approving in principle what we see today at this point in time, right, with more to come. So something like the stop on Beacon needs further discussion. There's a large tree that would have to come out, and so certainly staff does not look at that as a final decision at this point. It was mentioned the layovers that would be behind the Save On Foods and the impacts of parking on Bevan. And just in our last meeting, we were talking about would it be possible instead to potentially have the layovers in parking lot E, I believe it's called, as an alternative. So with the trade-off being losing more of the parking in that parking lot, but keeping trees and parking on Bevan. So there's still a lot of trade-offs and decisions to be discussed. So when we were helping draft the potential motions for the presentation, staff's perspective is that this is not final decisions by any means. It was endorsing to move to the next stage of design. And then we did want to have the discussion with council, would you like this brought back at the 60% before we move to the 90%? So if you'd like to reframe the motion, the endorsements to be just at this stage of design and endorse or approve in principle to move just to the next stage of design, then that might be one approach. But as I say, staff's perspective is that we're only approving in principle at this point in time for the very next stage, and nothing is approved for final.
Thank you, and that helps answer what was going to be a following question, and that is that council provided approval in principle for the initial concept. We're looking to considering providing approval in principle for this 30% design and concept change. It would be my expectation or my understanding that it would come back to council at 60% design for the same consideration, for the same motions. So thank you for that. I just have to say I have serious reservations about the bus stop on Beacon Avenue. I think every single red light going eastbound, the cars in both lanes or all three lanes for left-hand turn are pretty much backed up past that bus stop. I'm not the engineer, so I look for staff on that, but it is a concern. I want to speak for a moment to what is understandable both from what I've heard from the public, what I think the transit has heard from engagement, and what some colleagues have commented on this evening is This is infrastructure, but how is it going to operate? How are the routes going to operate? What are the route changes going to be? And that's a natural concern or consideration for people who use transit or are considering using transit, and for us, relating our feedback on behalf of, is we want to know which way the buses are going and what the routes are going to be. But the infrastructure is very important that it can support, and there will be flexibility, and there will likely be some route changes, 10 years, after whatever is implemented, as BC Transit continues to change their plans or their routes and scheduling from year to year or from season to season. So I have just as much interest as anyone in terms of what the operations will be in the future, but I'm more concerned with getting the infrastructure right at this stage, and would request that in the next concept that comes forward is that as Councillor Keefe touched on, that the layovers and the bus stops be clearly indicated. And while it may be self-evident to us that if it's there, it's going to go east or it's going to go west, that it just be indicated that with an arrow or something that it's going to go in that direction. The second piece I want to raise, in my motion arising, if I go forward with it based on hearing other discussion, is with regards to amenities. This is an opportunity, having a transit hub, which will be the central stop and go for transit riders. What the amenities are in there will make a difference. And thanks for the reminder. We had 37 parking spaces there today. It's was going to go down to 12. Now it's going down to 29. Personally, I'm not fussed about having public parking spaces there. When you look at the map, or you look at the below of the map, and you look how many parking spaces there are for the mall and the two adjacent malls, and you look at not the parking that's designated specifically for the Mary Winspear Centre, but what we refer to as the employee parking lot. That is 100 and I'm forgetting the number now, 50 plus spaces. We have ample parking in that area. What we want to see is this transit hub as efficient as possible. And for me, while it's not a park and ride, drop-off pickup will be important. And maybe it's going to be a little bit more important for the people in North Sydney, even though Sydney is not a huge municipality. Pick up and drop off for people coming from North Sydney. That would be a priority for me, but it would be subject to others. So other things like bike storage, placemaking, a map of Sydney, it's just absolute natural. We actually have a map board project that's been in place for 15 years with map boards in about 5 locations in our downtown. This would be a natural location for it, people entering and leaving the community. So what I will look to propose in my motion arising is that options with regards to amenities be brought back at the 60% design. So I'm going to leave it while we have important discussion on this, but I do have a question that arose just from another question, and that is, with regards to discussion of washrooms, is the only thing on the table or under consideration is a washroom for transit drivers, or are public washrooms a consideration?
Through the chair, to your worship, thank you for that question. Public washrooms are being considered. We're investigating both what kind of capacity there is at the transit hub to provide that, as well as continuing engaging with Town of Sydney staff on the capacity for the Town of Sydney to maintain it.
Thank you. I'll leave my motivation there, Chair.
Turn to the seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Despite my reluctance to second for discussion, it's not lost on me that, as the mayor noted, this is an important piece of infrastructure, and I really don't want to see my concerns at this stage impede moving forward to further design. And I'm confident that you're taking away some of the hesitation that we've got and some of the observations that we've made through questions to be considered at that 60% level. So I'll hear my colleagues speak, but I'm inclined to support the motion that's on the table. I would note I have significant reservations about the suggestion for a stop on Beacon, regardless of being a pullout or intended to be a pullout, perhaps not clear, but I heard staff say that a significant tree would have to be removed, and it's a busy intersection as it is, and the gateway to our community, so I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the number 70 stopping on 7th on the street. I think I prefer to an extent that design where, as the mayor noted, we may lose more parking, but we may make better use of the existing parking lot as a transit hub to keep, buses off of what is a very congested intersection, particularly if it shows, coming out of the Mary Winspear Center, and certainly, from 3:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. as traffic is leaving town, among other congested periods. And so I'm very concerned about the opportunity for accidents there if we further congest this by having a bus stop on 7th as is suggested. I feel like we're shaping up, the design that was proposed or recommended today for discussion, a fairly empty pedestrian plaza. And I know that space is eligible for some of these amenities that we could discuss, but I'm inclined to prefer to see buses be able to pull off and use that space as a legitimate transit hub as opposed to, a gathering area. I don't anticipate a volume of pedestrians in that area that would be necessary to dedicate that whole space as a pedestrian plaza. So I'll leave my comments there. Having made them, I'm still inclined to support the motion. I'd like to hear what my colleagues think. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll look to Councillor Duck online.
Thank you, Chair. Equally, I share concerns about the bus stop on Beacon. I think that's not going to serve well, never mind the congestion problems and the pedestrian crossing problems. I just don't see people moving to that point to catch a bus that when the transit hub is over on 7th and Bevan. I think, as the mayor's indicated, expanding the concept here is more important than having the buses on the roadway there, both for pedestrian or traveler drop-offs by people coming from North and West Sydney. And also, I'm not concerned about the loss of parking here because we're going to gain parking in other more strategic areas when those existing bus stops possibly convert and provide more parking, certainly in the layover areas. So, I'm agreeable to move this concept in principle forward, but I have those reservations there. Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to go first to Councillor Garnett and then Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Chair. I won't repeat some of the comments my colleagues have made. I agree with most of them. I think at this point, there's been dramatic improvements from the original one to 30%. So I'll support the motion because it's coming back at 60. So I assume there'll be some changes that are made that'll be enhancing what's here now. So I trust the work of staff and the transit to come back with something that'll be even better. Thank you.
Councillor O'Keefe, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm reluctant on this, and I think we've covered off a lot of the things. For me, again, just to, I guess, I'm not convinced that this is the best place for it. When I look, again, as I mentioned, with the survey, when we looked at where's the best place for this, this was not the best place. The community had other ideas. I know it works for BC Transit, but that's not what the community was asking for. So I know that we're going to fine-tune things, but I don't know how we're going to deal with things like people parking at the Mary Winspear Center. I think that's going to be an issue, and so that means more, parking enforcement. I'm concerned about congestion on Bevan. Later on the agenda, we're talking about traffic concerns on Bevan. I'd like to see bike storage. Also concerns about the 72 no longer stopping at 5th and Beacon. Again, the bus stop on Beacon doesn't make sense for me, and the number 70 parking on the street. So a lot of concerns there for me. Having said that, as long as we're not, signaling that we're absolutely endorsing the supportive of this, I'm okay to move it forward to the next level, but I really like to see some significant changes in some of these things addressed when this comes back to us. Thank you.
All right, I guess I will say I will also support this moving forward to the next level of design, and I too, like many of my colleagues, would be okay with losing that parking there if it meant getting some buses off of the street. I suspect when the community had a slight preference for the bus, for it being along the highway, that some of the motivation for that answer could have been that people didn't like the way it might affect the traffic flow along Bevan. And not because it would actually be an easier place for buses to go, but because they don't want it to affect the existing traffic. It's impossible to know when people give an answer what the motivation is, but I know because you've had to have consultation with the Mary Winspear and the surrounding businesses, and that's their number one thing, is maintaining their street parking, that could be a motivation. I would also would like if BC Transit has this sort of information when we say we're concerned about maybe having a drop-off zone, or that there is some still ability for cars to access that place to drop people off. I don't know how frequently I know people do get dropped off at bus stops all the time, but it's such a fast thing. I don't know how necessary that really is. And how much, whether transit has data on that based on how much that sort of activity snarls up really busy intersections, like say around Douglas, where people would be highly motivated to do that sort of thing. If you have more information about how people actually use the infrastructure when you build, that would be very helpful to me, because I can only base it on what I see and what I know. I know at other hubs there are huge buildups of people where the blink runs right now. In between those 15-minute buses, it fills up. Each of those buses goes full from downtown. It's incredible. I don't know that we have the same volume, obviously, from downtown Langford to downtown Victoria, but if we had some estimate of what the design specifications are, like the number of pedestrians moved per hour or something, so we have an idea, I feel that would help me understand. Obviously, it's not my job to micromanage that, but I know because a lot of my colleagues are expressing this hesitation around making the infrastructure meet our needs. The more we would know about how you design it and how confident you feel about it meeting our needs, I think that would help. And so with that, a further follow-up from Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I was remiss in not, other colleagues have done so, but thank you for taking the feedback from council and the initial concept, and also from stakeholders in the public, and removing the island that allows traffic both ways in and out of Mary Winspear. That is a very significant change, and demonstrates, gathering the feedback and implementing. I have two questions, and one is, could you bring back at the next time you come to committee council the number of passengers served in Sydney at the bus stops that will locate to this point? It would be nice to know that there are going to be X thousands of people a week, whatever the number, whatever the time frame. And it will also be helpful to have that as baseline, as perhaps you already capture when you make such changes. But to know that when this opened, there was X thousands of people using the service, and with the changes both in the infrastructure in this location, but also the route changes that it led to, we are looking for a mode shift. And I think while tweaking existing routes, and having this hub, the game changer is going to be Rapid Bus, and the length of time that it takes, shortening the time significantly between Sydney and all points south. My second question is with regards to bike storage. Transit will have bike storage experience at the McTavish Park and Ride, because there are several lockers there. If I'm an advocate of that, and in this location, even though it's constrained with number of parking space, or amount of space. But if those are productive, I think that should be a consideration for introducing that, and I think it would help with mode shift as well.
Thank you. So with that, I will look to call a question. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Duck, do you have a question or further comment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Go
Just a further question. I'm looking at this current diagram of your potential bus routing. I don't see the number 71 represented here. Is that going to become non-existent? And maybe the presenter can give us an update on where the 71 sits on this. Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you for that question. The 71 will continue to operate. This is not meant to be a comprehensive figure, just illustrative.
Okay. Just thank you. I just would suggest you do show it on future plans because it is an important connection to from downtown through West Sydney to Sydney. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Following that, then, I will look to call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Sorry.
And,
Chair, I do have a
sorry, motion arising, go ahead.
motion arising. That BC Transit bring back options for amenities to the 60% design presentation.
Do we have a seconder?
Who's second?
Thank you. I've already indicated, you know, my particular preference for amenities versus parking there, but I think this is the opportunity, colleagues, while some have, to express, you know, the interest in the amenities and the types of amenities in this transit hub. There will be opportunity for discussion, but I think if we're going from 30 to 60% design, this is the right opportunity to start looking at what those amenities could be.
Nothing to add.
Go ahead, Councillor O'Keefe.
Just seeking some clarity on this. So is it just the amenities that they would come back with? Or are we expecting that they will come forward with other elements of the plan in terms of design changes and some of the things we talked about?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just the amendment. So you're saying on top of the regular report that they would come with at the 60% point? Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, all that is covered in the first two motions.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, seeing no further questions, are there any other discussion, any more discussion on the motion arising? Go ahead.
And so I'll just I asked a question with regards to public washrooms, is I would have an interest. We're going to, of course, be concerned with the cost. It might be something that, you know, that Sydney is going to, you know, might be picking up, you know, as a significant amenity. But we've had great success with the public washrooms in Midtown at 4th Street and on the waterfront. And this is a place, I think, particularly if there are going to be thousands of people using this transit hub, that it's a natural location for a public washroom, but something to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'd just like to echo the comment about the public washrooms. What I'd be concerned about is if we don't have that available, that Mary Winspear Center or Dairy Queen will see more people going in there. And I don't think it's fair that they should have to absorb that. So I think that's worth us considering, even if we have to take on some of the cost of maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, I will call the question on the motion arising. All in favor? Okay. That carries unanimous. Now I will thank you for your time. Thanks. Okay, I will move on to 6B. Just give our presenters time to shuffle around. Our next item will be the Peninsula Recreation Facility and Loan Authorization Bylaw. And we have presenters here from Panorama and the CRD. So Steve, Michael, oh, I don't see his, okay, they'll introduce
My apologies,
themselves.
it's Louisa Jones, General Manager.
Excellent. Great.
Good evening, Chair and Council, Mayor. Before I begin, I would just like to introduce Niall Patel. He is the Peninsula Recreation Commission Chair, and he would like to provide a brief opening remarks ahead of my presentation, if that's okay.
Hello, good evening, Your Worship, Committee Chair, esteemed members of Committee, Council, and Sydney staff. My name is Niall Patel. I'm here with the honor today of presenting to you as the both a commission member and the chair of the Peninsula Recreation Commission. I'll begin by respectfully acknowledging that we are on the traditional territory of the WSÁNEĆ people, specifically Tsartlip, Sykim, Pakwachin, Sykim, and Malahat nations. And just as the nations span this beautiful peninsula that we all have the privilege of representing, the Peninsula Recreation Commission also oversees services for both your constituents as well as the ones that I also, with another hat, have the fortune of representing in the District of Central Saanich. This evening's presentation, though, as chair, is with the Capital Regional District, as we're seeking municipal consent bylaw 4761 to authorize the borrowing of up to $14.2 million to support a new recreation facility located in the District of Central Saanich. This project is an example of the Commission's shared service effort and model, supporting efficient, effective delivery of recreation services across the entire Saanich Peninsula. As I'm sure you're well aware, there have been consecutive strategic plans and needs assessments that have gone into supporting this project over the years. And the proposed facility will improve access to residents on the south of the peninsula, while ensuring that the Peninsula Recreation, through Panorama Recreation and other facilities, maintain the excellent service level that we have all come to know and expect within our existing facilities as well. This benefits across the entire peninsula. And with that overview, I will turn it over to our many great members of Capital Region and Peninsula Recreation staff to present this evening. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair and Chair. So before I continue, I would like to note that with me tonight are Kristen Morley, General Manager of Corporate Services, Steve Meikle, Senior Manager of Panorama Recreation, and Mike Medlin, our Senior Financial Advisor. And as Commission Chair mentioned, I will walk you through a few slides. And did I? Is there a pointer? Yeah. Okay, no pointer. Thank you. And just to walk you through a little bit of governance, the mandate for the Recreation Commission is to provide recreation and leisure activities and facilities to residents participating municipalities and local First Nations, regardless of age, gender, religion, or economic status. And the member municipalities, as you know, are North Saanich, Sydney, and Central Saanich. We, the staff, plan and deliver services based on a 5-year strat plan that we work through with the direction of a commission who has members from elected members from all participating municipalities and as well as members of public. Okay. So as mentioned, the CRD is seeking consent for borrowing up to $14.2 million for construction of a recreation facility to occupy the first floor of the District of Central Saanich's redeveloped municipal hall complex. The Peninsula Recreation Commission and the CRD Board have approved moving this request to the elector approval process via a sub-regional council consent, which requires that all 3 councils participating in the service consent to the loan bylaw for it to move and to succeed and be moved to the Provincial Inspector of Municipalities. And historically, borrowing for facility development on the peninsula has utilized that same model, and that's why the recommendation is here, consistent with previous events. There we are. So how did we get here? The issue of geographic equity in distribution of recreation services across the whole peninsula has been an issue identified in many strategic plans, some as early as 2010. And most recently, you see it in the 22 to 2026 strategic plan, as well as in the facility needs assessment that was completed in 2025. And I will start with the facility needs assessment, which reinforced that any new facility should prioritize a weight room, fitness studio, and multipurpose spaces. But beyond that, what we hear through our strat plans when we engage public is that transportation to the Panorama Rec facility can take up to 45 minutes if you're coming from the southern end of the peninsula, and this is a barrier for those that are located in the south and are trying to use public transit to access recreation. And that's basically one of the main barriers that we're trying to address here. Now, in terms of how that looks like, you can see in this map, which highlights the current service delivery locations of the recreation service. The blue dots, labeled 1 and 2, represent the larger centers of Panorama and Greendale, which include facilities such as weight rooms and fitness studios. And then the green dots, identified as 3, 4, and 5, represent locations where the service offers programs in multiple purpose spaces that are more limited. They don't have specific equipment as weight rooms, and they are shared facilities with limited access and programming options. In the map, you can see there are gaps in the distribution of the facilities, in particular the weight rooms and the fitness areas, which in both in the southern end and in the northern end of the peninsula. But I will also note that the southern end of the peninsula is more dense, and it represents a development hub, and it's identified as a center of growth in the OCPs, in the OCP of the District of Central Saanich as well. In terms of the locations of the current facilities, as you know, Panorama Rec Center is located in the District of North Saanich. Greenglade Community Center is located in the town of Sydney, and Central Saanich currently does not have a similar recreation facility. Nevertheless, since 1997, Central Saanich residents have been supporting facilities through this service as contributor members of the commission and the service. Now, in terms of what this facility is proposing, it's a partnership with the District of Central Saanich at their Municipal Hall Complex project at Hovey Road and Wallens Drive. It is proposed for approximately 10,000 square feet of community recreation, which would include, again, as noted in all our plans, a weight room, fitness and dance studio, pottery or ceramic studio, and then multipurpose space for programs and meeting spaces, community gathering, etc. As well as it would also serve as an admin and service space for operations, and as well as washrooms, change rooms, etc. In terms of the benefits of this facility and what we found through our studies, first of all, by adding this facility, we would improve travel time and accessibility for residents in the Brentwood, Keating, and other neighborhoods south of the current Panorama Center, which at the same time addresses the high demand, such as real wait lists for group fitness classes, pottery studios, and the weight room facility access. And I will note that the fitness programs at Panorama Rec fill out within 15 minutes of opening, and they currently carry wait lists for other members. And the pottery programs at Greenglade fill it up within 24 hours of opening. And we are currently curtailing access to those by requiring progression through the courses. So you can't only access the advanced courses when you do the first program. So relieving that pressure will also then remove a barrier for those that currently cannot access those programs because they are filled very quickly. And then finally, spreading the use of the weight room across the peninsula would relieve the current high demand that we see at Panorama Recreation. And again, removing a barrier for those that are discouraged to attend right now due to the high volume of attendance. And then finally, supporting that facility or creating that facility would create a community hub in the Centennial Park area where the Peninsula Recreation currently operates a new cover multi-sport complex, and that would serve operationally, would also allow us to to manage our services more efficiently from that center as well. Can you help me? Okay, so we're now on the financial piece. So you see two tables in front of you. You can see on the top table that the principal and the amount on the loan authorization bylaw is $14.2 million, which represents an annual debt servicing cost of approximately $1.36 million per year. And that, if it's amortized, thank you, in 15 years, it would generate some of the numbers that you see in the table below. Specifically in the middle, like the increase in requisition impact per year per average household of that servicing amount. You can see there for all the member municipalities, with Sydney having an impact of approximately $47 per household for this loan to, if this loan becomes a reality. You will see on the previous column the 2026 current requisition impact per household for Sydney specifically is already $257.66. So with the addition of the $47, we would come to a total impact per household of averaging around $305. Okay. And now I'll just quickly walk you through the timelines. We have 3 distinct processes going on right now. So one of them, or the one that I'm walking you through right now, is the loan authorization process, which you see identified in blue on the timetable in the slide. And you can see staff are expecting to, if everything's successful, we're expecting a completion of that process approximately in October this year. The other timeline that you see here is design and construction, which are in green. And you can see that we're currently under development design phase, which we calculate that will stretch all the way through to July, and then progress through a construction design phase all the way through March 2027, where we expect construction to begin and completion to occur in approximately January 2029. And then in yellow there you see the negotiation of agreements which are currently underway. These would be between the CRD and the District Central Saanich to ensure all the requirements for the loan are completed and the partnership agreements well established through a clear legal document. That brings me to the end of the presentation, Chair. And again, staff are here with me to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll turn to my colleagues. Do you have any questions for the presenter? I see Councillor O'Keefe and Councillor Rintoul. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, was,
Okay.
Thanks for the offer, but I'll go last and let you go first. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. When I looked at this, I noticed that the item in the PRC plan, strategic plan, was to look at cost-effective means to meet these needs. So what kind of exploration, if any, was done to look at other potential space, like with the school districts, or the cultural center in Brentwood Bay?
Through you, Chair, I'll start this answer, but I will look to my colleague Steve Meikle to add a few details, because I know he knows everything that we looked at. But generally, staff looked at different sites, again, in that Brentwood area. We looked at the cost of acquiring the land and building a suitable facility, and the benefits that would bring, because obviously there are pros and cons on sharing, co-locating with others. And when we did that exercise, we found, one, that the available real estate is limited for the uses that we require. So we looked at very specific sites that could accommodate those uses. So that's an actual barrier, and the availability of land, and then the cost of that land. So, and then we ran a economic analysis on the cost of, procuring that land versus the opportunity to partner with a partner that would not pass on those costs of the land. And I think that was one of the most important factors that rendered this analysis to be so beneficial. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we could share. It is documented in our reports what that financial analysis was. So happy to share that.
Thank you. What I was more interested in, and I think I did see somewhere that, obviously the cost of procuring land and building is more expensive, but I was speaking more of existing facilities. So School District 63. So you've got, in Brentwood, you've got Brentwood Bay Elementary, you've got Bayside Middle School, you've got Stellies. I know Panorama has tapped into using North Saanich at times for yoga and badminton and other things. There's also space at the Cultural Center. So it just seemed to me, I would be interested in knowing what those options were. They seem to have a lot of space there. Taxpayers have already paid for that space. Is there a way to use that in the evenings or share space? So if you can tell me what discussions took place with a School District 63.
It's through the chair for sure. And I'm going to look to Senior Manager Steve Meikle to walk you through that.
Thank you, through the chair. We continue to have discussions with School District 63 on options of their current space as well as potential future planning for their spaces. Obviously with schools, there's limitations in when you can operate public programming out of those school spaces. We'd be limited obviously to weekends and evenings, and weekends can be challenging given maintenance staff schedules at those facilities. The other issue is, in particular, looking to meet needs around providing a weight room. That's probably the big one, and a pottery studio. Those are purpose-built facilities, specially built facilities. Current school facilities do not meet those needs, in particular around things like air handling and drainage and ventilation, etc. And that leads to the similar comments around the Cultural Center in Brentwood Bay. We do offer programming through that through those spaces, but it is older space. It would need significant renovations to bring that to a place where we could offer full weight room services, full fitness class services, and potentially pottery studio. And it was prohibitive at the time to look at renovating that space as well. And there was no current plans for redevelopment of that space with the District of Central Saanich. So at the time, looking at options, this option was the most presentable to provide the adequate needs for that kind of a space, for a weight room space in particular, where both flooring, ventilation, air handling are all very important considerations in offering a proper space there.
So is there somewhere in the various CRD reports where this was costed out? What you said, it was cost prohibitive. So is there some financial information you could provide on that?
Sorry, no, not in terms of renovating the Cultural Center. We weren't able to go down that road. You'd need to actually start taking apart the building to learn a little more about what might be needed for a renovation. So we didn't get cost estimates on that, no.
Okay. And did we consider that maybe Stellies might like to add a pottery studio to their existing art facility? Is that something you talked to them about?
We talked to them not specifically about Stellies, but in general about their longer term plans. As my understanding, the School District 63 is going through long-term asset planning right now, strategic planning. Renovations at Stellies were not in their near-term plan that we were informed of. So
okay.
That did not come up as part of that discussion, no.
Okay. What is just moving on to the costing aspect of things. So what's the total cost of the building? Like for the town hall? And does it also include the police department and the fire department, or is that something separate?
Chair, may I
I'm just wondering if that's in scope here for this. This is, the CRD is not responsible for the civic facility that Central Saanich is building.
Okay, I'm just trying to get an idea of how our portion of the cost was arrived at. And I guess the reason I'm asking in terms of how the portion for the recreational facility was how we came up with that is whether there's different, I don't know if you calculate it just on a square footage basis, or whether the needs, say, for admin space or in a recreation facility versus the needs for police department and fire department, whether there's different square footage calculations. So just wanting to clarify how the costing for our portion of the development was considered.
Sure, thank you. Through the chair. Essentially, we've gone through several iterations, so there is part of a cost-sharing agreement that we're negotiating with District of Central Saanich that would be based on a percentage of the square footage of the building. So when you talk about a building, we'd be paying a certain percentage of the roof, for example, a certain percentage of the parking lot. Otherwise, the costing is, it's our floor, so we just look at it. If you were to take that out of the building and look at it separately, that's been the costing we're working through, is just for our space alone.
Okay, and so thank you for that. In regards to if there were cost overruns, so we're authorizing a certain amount. If the project went over, how does that get dealt with?
Through the chair, so the estimate right now includes contingencies, and I would add that there are several, I'm going to call them off-ramps in the agreements that the CRD would enter in with the partner municipality that would allow us to come off of the commitments at certain periods of time, depending on those, if the costs go beyond what has been authorized. And that would all go through, obviously, the governance process of going through commission and board. So it would be at the direction first of the commission and then of the CRD board as to where they're comfortable. And they're also guiding also the agreement process, so where they're comfortable committing to and how, when to come off.
Right, okay. And then how does, would the PRC then own that first floor? Was there perhaps like a lease agreement considered rather than outright? Would the PRC own it, or like is it to be stratified, or?
Through the chair, the ownership model that was recommended for this was a long-term lease, and that fulfills the requirement from the Municipal Financial Authority, and that's what it was structured like.
Okay, so the PRC would be leasing the first floor from the,
Yes, for 50 years, up to 50 years.
so we're, so then in terms of operating costs, is there a lease payment on top of this initial infrastructure investment?
Thank you, through the chair. No, there would not be additional lease payments. The capital investment would be essentially our lease payment.
Okay.
There will be other costs, of course, associating with operating, some shared cost around utilities, for example, and those kinds of pieces, and equipment replacement for long-term kind of reserve funds for that capital replacement projects.
Okay, and there's one more, I think, Chair. Is this, if this is due to growth in the community, is this something that's eligible for development cost charges or a federal or infrastructure grants?
Through the chair, the PRC doesn't currently charge amenity contribution costs or these DCCs for recreation to allocate growth costs. So the answer to that is no. In terms of grants, currently, I mean, we haven't identified any, but it is constant work to look and identify opportunities to offset any kind of investments that CRD can work on.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rintoul, then I'll have you next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Couple of questions, if I may. To follow the line of inquiry from Councillor O'Keefe, so borrowing up to $14,200,000, and I see that it is up to, but on the basis then that we're looking at a 10,000 square foot facility, that's $1,420 a square foot. Seems pricey, but I don't know much about building recreation centers. Can you tell me what is this a built out and facilitated building in the sense that is it just your pure capital costs, or are there any other inclusions in that $14.2 million?
Sure, I'll look to Steve Meikle to walk you through the estimate.
Sure, thank you, through the chair. That cost would be, literally, we'd be opening the doors and be ready to operate. That includes all equipment costs. It includes all the, what we would call, we're terming at this point, tenant improvements, but the more specialized features necessary for a recreation center, a sprung wood floor, for example, for that fitness studio, adequate flooring and ventilation for a weight room. It includes all the equipment for the weight room. So at this point, we're costing to be able to open the doors.
Through the chair, and if I may add, during our costing exercises, we did look at benchmarks on recreation facilities of similar use, and I mean, I'll caveat this with it being it's difficult, to benchmark these facilities, but the costs were pretty. Like they would range between the cost that we found per square foot in this facility all the way up to $1,000 a square foot if you look at recent rec centers in the Lower Mainland. So even with that benchmark, the project pointed to being economically convenient, I will say feasible.
Yeah, thank you. That was going to be my next question, what benchmarks there were either locally or in the Lower Mainland that would be comparative. So thank you for addressing that. The process, if you would speak to that, because the presentation doesn't touch on it. Some of the material, the supporting material does, but I think it's important just to hear it stated here in terms of what the options would have been to approve this. So the CRD has, and I guess the Recreation Commission are comfortable with the municipal consent, where the three municipalities each have to confirm their support for this borrowing. Were there other options in terms of obtaining consent to have moved this forward?
Through the chair, I'll begin to answer this question, but I'll look to my colleague, Kristen Morley, to add all the context or all the options. Staff decided on recommending this option for several reasons. One of them, consistency in terms of borrowing that's happened through that service has been always come through council for consent on behalf of voters. And then secondly, we are in an election year, so to run an alternative approval process, which is another one of the options, was challenging with the timing and length of that and the confusion that could create for voters if we were going through it, at a similar time as an election. We also had challenges with the project timeline, which is expected to, again, start the construction design phase towards a time where we would be under the AAP, and it would be difficult to run that through the construction phase, which is at the time that we need to have a certain degree of certainty whether or not the project, the CRD would engage in the commitment. And I'll look to GM Morley to add the other options that we looked at.
Before you do that, just with respect, I beg your pardon, to the chair, with respect to ARP, because you just spoke to it, and you talked about maybe the election cycle being a challenge or confusing. Is the time really driven then by the process in Central Saanich to build the building? That's a multi-purpose building, so obviously there's a timeline that's been established. to suit that municipality's needs. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, and I mean that would be the situation with any partnership in which you have two or more parties going through a process. So certainly, and yes, and I would add that. Well, I'm actually going to let GM Morley
I agree with what you're
to
stating.
speak.
It's an opportunity, I would suggest.
Thank you through the chair. I can also add too that there are other considerations we take into consideration, or other things we take into consideration, like the fact that an AAP, of course, has a different threshold. So to run an AAP, you would need to get, for it to succeed, you would have to have less than 10% of eligible voters sending in a objection form. Essentially, it's a counter petition process. So, depending upon the process, sometimes it seems, those are the things we also take into consideration. So, what is sort of the best way, I would say, to gauge whether or not there's support, typically in services like this, where we have a sub-regional service with councils or municipalities that participate, we would very often undertake a municipal consent process. Now, one thing I will say is that when it's referred to municipalities, it's actually up to the municipality how you wish to provide your consent. So typically what councils we see most often doing is taking a vote and passing a resolution, voting, and providing consent that way. But it is up to the council if you wish to run your own AAP to obtain that consent, or your own referendum for that matter.
So through the chair, was the referendum the third option that perhaps would have been put forward had staff suggested that?
So yes, and I don't want to repeat what Louise has shared already, but yes, the three options are council.
I don't think we spoke to the third.
Okay, so council consent on behalf, a sub-regional AAP, which would just be in the three municipalities, or a referendum.
Which was the third option.
Yes.
And equally, I'm assuming, given the timeline and the opportunity to move forward with this, that would not meet with the requirements of this timeline. Is that correct?
So through the chair, given how close we are to the municipal election and the amount of time it takes to get approval for all the elements leading up to a referendum, we would be looking, if we were to do a referendum for this, it would be conducted at the same time as the general election. So as I understand it, and I would look to my colleagues to clarify, but I think that's probably somewhat later than the planned project schedule.
Okay, so the project schedule is driving the decision process.
I would also say, though, that I think, pardon me through the chair if I may, there is also a consideration about the expense of a referendum. Certainly there are expenses that would accompany running a referendum that make it more expensive than council consent or AAP.
Thank you. If I may, Chair, a question through you to Town of Sydney staff. To town staff, if committee were to make the recommendation that is listed in the CRD report dated April 9th, that council support municipal consent, when would that come back to council? What would staff's intent be for a timeline for that to come back to council?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Rintoul, the mayor and I spoke about timing, and we were considering allowing a 2-week period from the council being informed about this process, and then bringing it back at the May 4th committee of the whole evening, but we would have to either interrupt the meeting or at the end of the committee of the whole hold a special council meeting to then garner council's decision on this question. I did want to check with CRD staff about the timing, if that works well with their process, in order to get it on their board agenda for their, I understand they're hoping to bring this back to their board in their May board meeting, and I didn't get a chance to confirm with their staff if that works.
The city report suggesting that we need to get back to them by May 15th, so the 2-week period, I suppose. Would the town look to make any specialized opportunity to further publicize that decision process?
Yeah, we would likely, depending on the committee's approach this evening, we would likely put out a notice on our regular media channels to inform the public that this is being considered by council.
Thank you.
You're all done your questions? All right, I'll move to Councillor Garnett then.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for being here and for your presentation and answering questions. It's greatly appreciated. I'm a member of the commission, just for people in the audience who might be watching or on TV at home or computer at home. For Councillor Rintoul's, just so you know, District of North Saanich has a presentation next Monday, and they have a motion, I think Councillor or Commissioner De Batista moved a motion that they would be making their consideration on May 4th. So it would be best, I think, if we align both doing it the same night, in case if one votes against it, then why would the other one even have the consideration? Because then it wouldn't pass, right? So just for consistency, I think it makes a lot of sense for it to be the same night. So thank you. Questions for you? Is that okay? You're looking at me like you're puzzled. Well, that way we're not influenced by their decision. They're not influenced by our decision. So yeah. Thank you. Sorry for that sidebar. So I have a few questions, and when I was contemplating these questions, I mean, a lot of this information I obviously know, being in the commission and having access to reports that regular public won't. So I think I looked at it from the perspective of asking a question that people in my community might ask. So first of all, the geographic equity, or in this case particularly inequity. So when I give consideration to that, and I think about my life experience and how far I had to travel to go to get recreation where I lived, things have obviously changed since then. So I'm just curious as to when the consideration to change it to anything driving over 10 minutes to an indoor recreation facility became considered geographic inequity, and why?
Through the chair, I'll start, but I think Senior Manager Meikle will have a lot of insight on this. I would say that it is what we hear, like when we do the strategic management plans, every time we renew this plan, we engage public. So in those engagements, those are, we pull out the themes. So this would have been one of these themes. And I will look to Steve Meikle to elaborate on that.
Thank you. Through the chair. Partially repeating what was said there, that it simply is what we've heard from people, that they, I think primarily for the folks we heard from in that southern end of the peninsula, it was primarily the transit issue that we heard about. In most cases, people anecdotally telling us we have to take 2 to 3 buses to get from Keating, Brentwood area to get to Panorama. It can take up to 45 minutes for them to do that, or longer in some cases, depending on how much walking they had to do to get to that bus stop. So I think that probably was the primary concern where that came from. Driving, I would agree, it's, would seem to be insubstantial really in terms of that difference driving from one facility to the next. So that's partly probably where that comes from, is the transit relation. One of the things we also did hear from in the recent facility needs assessment, we are still, it's generally an older population out on the peninsula, as I'm sure you're well aware, and that's probably a lot of the folks we hear from. It also alludes back to the question Councillor O'Keefe had asked about utilizing schools. One of the places we're actually seeing great demand for programs and services is Monday to Friday daytimes, mornings in particular, where those fitness classes fill, as we've mentioned, within 15 minutes, and they are full with generally people over 60 years old, generally women over 60 years old. There's a massive demand for that, and that's part of what we're trying to address there.
Great, thank you. Next question, just so, again, for my community, to confirm that there was a loan authorization of $2.9 million that was given consent in 2023 for the multi-sport box in District of Central Saanich, which is pretty much right by where the proposed site is. And the town and city residents do contribute to that through the requisition presently, correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Great, thank you. And I think it was Councillor O'Keefe was mentioning about costs. There also is a portion of this where up to $1 million has been approved for borrowing from capital reserve. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Great, thank you. So referring to the March 26 staff report, and you had it up on one of your slides, that the town of Sydney average household would be 4736 annually or per year, and it's over 15 years. So based on that, if everything were to play out exactly in those numbers, we're looking at a little over $700 over the course of the loan for the average Sydney resident. Would that be approximate?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Great, thank you. Again, back in the report, and it states in there, based on the Municipal Financing Authority of BC's current indicative rate, which indicates 4.36%, February 25th, 2026. Estimated cost debt servicing 1.36 million over 15-year amortization for a total repayment of 20.407 million. So I was thinking about this, and given current economic uncertainty and the bond market rates, which have gone up and has increased long-term borrowing rates, is it conceivable the interest rate that's mentioned here could actually be higher and have costs higher, just based on everything that's happened since February 28th and the war that was started by U.S. and Israel?
Through the chair, yes, but possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't guarantee.
Well, you're not
the
locked
future.
into any rates at this point in
No.
time, so.
No, and I
Okay.
mean, and again, the information we
Yeah.
provided is prior to some of the developments that
Yeah.
have occurred. So I would suggest that yes, that you need to consider those in your thinking.
Perfect. Yeah. No, I'm just trying to, because we're given information to make a decision on, but things have changed. So we have to have that thinking of a little bit of flexibility. And then the last one, and I know that there'll be or not the last question, but second last question, with regards to the Class C cost estimate that was provided in that same report. And I granted that it'll be more refined in a Class A when it gets down to it. But again, this is the information we're having to make a decision based on. And you have mentioned there's a really healthy contingency fund, 2.878 million. And again, this report was dated February 27th, prior to February 28th, when the world went on its head. So do you have any concerns about the numbers in that report based on everything that's happening in global kind of economic uncertainty, and whether the costs that are sort of estimated in there might be underestimated, given like if it had been done even a month later?
Through the chair, I would say that we haven't seen the impacts of what's happening in the world here just yet. And CRD, we plan and deliver, many capital projects throughout the year, and it hasn't been our experience thus far. With that said, I mean, it is possible. We all hear, the opinions, and the experts believe that this may very much do so. I will note that as of the time of us writing that report, the construction cost actually estimation came under the initial estimate. So, and I mean all this to say, this is a many years in the making project, and what you see today might be a little bit different, but in the next few months. But with that, I will also caution that we do have the ability to have exit clauses and the ability to pull out from the project up to a certain time when we wouldn't have before we fully commit to construction. So that avenue still exists, and is one that we are pursuing with the agreements that we're putting in place.
Great, thank you. And I have, thank you, Chair. I just have one last question. If, for whatever reason, this municipal consent process does not proceed, one or more of the municipalities decide to not consent to it, this bylaw, is there a possibility that there might be a change in timelines from the District of Central Saanich to allow for one of the other two processes for electoral assent to be used at that point?
Through the chair, I cannot speak for the District of Central Saanich, and we did not have those conversations.
But that's not, I mean, but I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. Could that possibility happen? Taking District of Central Saanich out of the equation in their timeline, but if this particular method of electoral assent did not succeed, would there be an avenue to proceed with one of the other two options?
Through the chair, it is my first process. I'm going to look to GM Morley to walk you through the procedural options without speaking about Central Saanich.
That's fine. Thank you.
So through the chair, if this process doesn't succeed, the board could potentially reconsider in 6 months from now. So 6 months from the date it made the decision to proceed with council consent, it could consider potentially another option, but would not proceed before that time.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for answering my questions. I think it's very valuable information for the community to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will see Councillor Duck online has questions.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And if I could get clarification from the presenter, thank you for the presentation, some great information, which I just want to get clarification on. You indicated earlier in the presentation that Panorama has reached capacity in all aspects. Can you confirm this relative to the facilities that are being considered for the central Saanich location, that capacity is surpassed at Panorama?
Through the chair, certainly, and I would speak that capacity in certain periods of time for certain programs, but I will let Senior Manager Meikle walk you through that.
Thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair. I don't actually recall that we stated that we were at capacity. We are in high demand. And I think what we experience at that point is that some participants miss out, either due to their own comfort level, for example, in a weight room. Going into a weight room where there's 50 or 60 other people can be very uncomfortable for some individuals. Excuse me, there's certain times a day where we do reach that 50 to 60 people in our weight room, particularly in the morning times and evening times, which are clearly the most available times for many people to participate in that kind of activity. For our group fitness classes, as mentioned, we do have people that it's a bit of a rush to try to register for those classes. We open classes on a weekly basis, and individuals, they fill within about 15 minutes, and that's about 30 people per class. And we do have probably, I would say, 5 to 10 people who are trying to get into those classes generally that are missing out. So the classes, I would say, are at capacity. The building facility itself, I wouldn't characterize as at capacity other than just moment or times of high demand. So we're looking to spread that usage out to create opportunities for others.
Okay, so there is potential for increased capacity given the facility has not reached its fully. The other question you identified was the transportation challenge from southern sectors of central Saanich to Panorama. And I'm wondering if you looked at similar studies looking at travel patterns and access to Commonwealth Place, which of course is on the northern sector of Saanich and does have good connecting bus routes there. So I wonder if you looked at travel times to that being less than to Panorama, given from those specific points you've indicated we're about an hour or more from getting to Panorama.
Thank you. Through the chair, we didn't get into specific analysis other than we did hear from individuals through those processes that they are choosing to go to Commonwealth as opposed to coming to Panorama because it is somewhat easier for them to get there. In particular, those were folks that had identified from the Tanner Ridge area, Keating area in particular. And so I think just through reporting in the strategic or the facility needs assessment, we went through that people are making that choice to go to Commonwealth Place, but we didn't do a particular analysis of transit time there. As you mentioned, also given Commonwealth Place is right at a pretty major transit hub there.
Right. So I'm just pointing out that there are other access points beyond Panorama that maybe lie outside of the PRC administration zone, but are equally providing recreational services. So that brings me to my next question is this not a similar situation that the Western Communities faces in that the Juan de Fuca Recreation Commission operates the Juan de Fuca Rec Center, but there are several private and separate facilities that cater to the public, such as West Hills Arena and the, I don't know what it's called now, but the West Hills Y, which are other facilities providing similar services, but outside of the Juan de Fuca Commission. Is that not an opportunity that could happen here as well?
Through the chair, I guess like from a Peninsula Recreation Service perspective, we look at how we serve members of the communities that are members of this service. So it is our goal and our mandate to provide services within the service area. And I guess if I can offer a little bit more perspective on how we look at these issues, we look at removing the barriers. So we hear from our members or from our residents that there is a barrier for access for many that might be able to access the facility, but the facility is too busy or too constrained at the times that they are seeking services. So that's one barrier that we're trying to remove by spreading the service area a little bit further. And then secondly, also then the barrier of access for those that are traveling more than 45 minutes in transit to access our main facility. So there's two barriers that both of our governing documents pointed at. They could be resolved by adding a third facility in a different center area that has, a structure for growth as well.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Do you have that statistical information that shows that those barriers? I mean, that wasn't provided in the report, so I'd just like to get more of a sense of what those Central Saanich residents saw as the barriers and what the percentage was. I read somewhere that there was a survey done, but it was a very limited response in terms of a recreation response. I think it was, not definitive in defining and identifying the barriers for the population there. So I just wonder if you could provide more information about that.
Through the chair, we can provide information that inform the facility needs assessment, where these barriers were further explored and also identified the kind of facilities that the service would require in the future. And that is a public document, but we can certainly circle that through staff, through Sydney staff to you.
That'd be great. And I'd appreciate if we can get that within the next 2 weeks, because obviously we're looking at potential decision or further discussion of this within the next couple of weeks. And my final question, if I may, Chair, is that in the presentation it was spoken about that this, the $14 million was essentially a 50-year lease payment. I'm a little concerned with that because that's not typically how you run a lease, because you have leasehold improvements. Is the equipment that's going in there in this construction phase going to last for 50 years? I mean, even within Sydney, we're looking at a municipal precinct that is over 60 years old and well past its best before date, and I'm concerned that we're paying for a lease that may not run the full term, and if we could give some identification of that ability to keep the facility fresh and new and up to date in the years going forward, if it's already defined in the lease payment.
Through the chair, Senior Manager Miko, please.
Thank you. Through the chair. We would operate the same way we operate our other facilities. So we do put aside significant amounts for capital reserves each year that go towards exactly what you're talking about, maintaining the equipment and the facility itself. So we would be starting that process right away and building those capital reserves over time. Probably the biggest mechanical equipment would be the air handling equipment, and that would be, we would plan a life cycle plan for that and replacement costs, and factor that into how much we're putting into capital reserves on an annual basis.
So on that note, Mr. Michael, is the option of having that basic space constructed as part of the District of Central Saanich's Municipal Hall, and the PRC look at a lease back operation and do its own leasehold improvements for that facility, and then operate it as a lease operation because of changing environments, changing needs and requirements. Who knows if in 20 years that's going to be required, much like you're operating other facilities. How would you look at that relative to, rather than paying the lease amount up front?
Through the chair, before I look to Senior Manager Meikle to answer that question, I would want to clarify that from the total project cost, the construction cost due to the partner to District Center Sandwich is approximately $7 million, and then the rest of the costs are other costs that we've identified through our costing process. So we can definitely provide that breakdown through staff so that you can see the difference, because obviously some of those funds will also start some of these pieces that we're talking about managing the facility or outfitting it properly. And now I'd look to Senior Manager Meikle for the details.
Sure, thank you. Through the chair. The lease agreement over that time would have provisions, or would have provisions to allow for a change of purpose or a change of use of that facility should that occur in 20, 30 years from now. It would still be a CRD facility, but should there be a desire to convert that more to an arts facility in 20 years, that flexibility would be there.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. And again, if we could get that leasehold or the construction development costs in the next couple of weeks, that will help in our furthering our discussion on this. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, presenters.
Thank you. Do we have any other first-time questions? Mayor McNeil-Smith, I guess you're the last one.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation and coming this evening. I don't have questions as a participant on the Rec Commission. I've certainly had the opportunity there, and appreciate Councillor Gurnett raising other things out of community interest. Just a request for 2 pieces of information regarding Green Glade to come to be available for our meeting in 2 weeks, if that's how we proceed tonight. And that is, when did Green Glade open as a panorama facility, and what are the users? How many users are at Green Glade in a given time period, whether it's a week or a month? So I'm not expecting you to have that top of mind.
No, thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I'm the last one who's a first-time speaker then. Actually, can I just ask staff just to move the little black box there off the total impact at the end that has been covered this entire time, so that members of the public can see it. I think people who are watching online can move the box on their own side, but people who are in here can't. Perfect, thank you. So I am just going to clarify. So the current requisition impact is, for Sydney, is $257.66. That's how much Sydney residents currently pay on their tax bill for PRC related facilities?
Yes, Chair, through you, as
Okay.
of 2026.
Thank you. I just want to make sure so that people looking at this and see total requisition impact aren't going to think that we're asking for 305 additional. We're asking for 47 additional, and that's how much we already pay, just to kind of put into context the magnitude of the facility. Thank you. I think that's important. Because of my demographics and the age of my children, what I hear most from people is that the wait list for swimming lessons is what fills up with, like, before you can hit the button on your computer. And so what I hear is, if we're building a new facility, why, people can understand we have a space that's being built that's government owned. Here's a little piece of what we need that can be built there. But what people are saying, if we paid slightly more, waited slightly longer, could we get a facility that had a pool? And I think you partially answered that when you were talking, when Councillor O'Keefe was saying, what are your other options you're looking at? But I know people in my demographic are just like, where can we get another pool? Because it's that or drive down to Saanich, which obviously makes the transportation equity problem worse. So for people who are wondering whether that would be an option, this one forecloses, or whether that makes future discussions of that option anywhere else easier, or if it's just not even on your register, if you could expand on that a little bit more.
Certainly, Chair, and I will say that there's a whole section in the facility needs assessment for pools, and I will quickly summarize what I recall, but very interesting analysis. When we looked at the service needs, based on benchmarks from other municipalities, We weren't there in terms of lanes per 100,000 people. I think it's the metric that would trigger us to consider a new pool facility. And I would add, we were very careful at maintaining that indicative and not crossing over, because the cost of delivering a pool facility is, I mean, I don't want to quote Crystal Pool, but we know, I think, the 200 millions, right? So the difference in cost is quite significant. I would think it would make the endeavor unfeasible. So we couldn't consider it any further.
Thank you. That's what I always say. But thank you for clarifying. I will look for second time speakers if there are any follow-up questions from Councillor O'Keefe. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just going back to the accessibility, people being able to get to facility. So is there, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with bus service in Central Saanich, but what sort of bus service is available at Centennial Park, and how frequent is that?
Through Chair, Steve Meagle will answer that.
Sure, thank you, through the chair. I can't speak to actual frequency. I don't know the schedule off, but there currently are bus stops on either side of the road right in front of where this facility would be. So there is service there. Frequency I'd have to get back to you on though.
And that runs from Brentwood?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
My understanding, through Brentwood along Wallace to the Saanich Exchange, and then from there. So Saanich Exchange is pretty close to where the current Central Saanich Municipal Hall is.
So it would go right by Centennial Park?
That's exactly where, that's the location we are proposing here.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if you were saying that it went to Saanich Exchange and then somehow they would have to find their way
No, because
down the street.
they do plan to, through the chair, they do plan to hit Stelli's School as a popular bus destination or bus location for folks. So right along Wallace Drive past Stelli's, through Centennial Park or across Centennial Park, and then into Saanich Exchange or otherwise into Brentwood.
Okay. Thank you. And then just one other question. I can't remember where I saw it. Maybe in this information or elsewhere. Information about the increase in the revenue anticipate from adding those extra services. And the number that's in my head is around 10% or something, and then you were gonna have to hire extra staff, and then the net result would be maybe a net income of, I don't know, something in the 20,000s. I'm just seeking some clarity on that.
Thank you, through the chair. We estimated increase in revenues at 10%, which is very conservative. It's a little difficult to tell sort of what new passes you might, or new pass holders you might generate through that. We anticipate, as I mentioned earlier, we are aware that a number of individuals in the Central Saanich, or in our catchment area, if you like, are currently using Commonwealth Place. We would hope that we would be attracting them more towards our services if possible. Again, that is our mandate, to meet their needs within that service area. So we did look at 10%. And we also took a pretty conservative look at the operating budget. We would certainly have to hire staff, obviously, to operate the facility. We're estimating about 3 full-time staff plus a number of auxiliary roles for program leadership there. So at some point, we do operate on a 50-50 split in terms of 50% of our revenues come from user pay, and then 50% through taxes, through requisition. We're still looking at that model for the same facility, same way as Green Glade and as Panorama. So I'm not here trying to say will be a moneymaker, so to speak, but it will match our current structure for how revenues and expenses flow.
Okay, so I guess I'm just thinking ahead to, it sounds like there's a lot of people using Panorama already, and they might choose to go to places closer like Centennial Park. So not necessarily any increase in revenue there. but you think there might be a little bit. And I guess I'm just wondering, in the event that calculations are off and you don't get that additional revenue, would that mean that that would show up in the operating budget and then an increase in the amount that taxpayers would pay then to absorb that?
Thank you, through the chair. That is certainly a possibility. That's a possibility with any of our services. I think probably the more concrete piece that we are looking at is servicing our current wait list. We know we have wait lists to access fitness programs, to access pottery programs. So immediately, if we can bring those people into programs, it increases their participation and increases revenues from there as well. So that's probably a little more concrete. It's a little difficult to say how people will spread out and what new folks we may attract to this. Of course, you go into these things anticipating we will attract new participants, but it's those wait list folks that we're really hoping that's who we can accommodate.
Right, okay, thanks for that.
Nothing to add? Okay. In that case, I'm going to look for, as has already been come up for, did you wish to make the referral motion? Okay, the mayor wishes to make the referral motion. I was simply going to recap that as North Saanich will be hearing the presentation from Panorama and the CRD next week, we want to wait until they've heard it, until we've had a couple of weeks to put out communication with the public, to seek public feedback from obviously our electors, and then be able to make the decision on hopefully the same night that North Saanich does. So we'll be referring this to our May 4th meeting. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to move that committee refer council's consideration of the CRD adopting bylaw 4761, and there's a description of that in the CRD letter, to a special council meeting on Monday, May 4th, to provide the opportunity for public input.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Do you wish to motivate further first, mover?
No, I think we've provided part of the rationale through our discussions tonight. I think this is very significant for the community on the peninsula. I think this is very worthy of consideration, given that, for example, the Green Glade facility was established in Sydney some 15 years ago, approximately 15 years ago, and has been a roaring success. I've participated in some of the programs and facilities there over time and seen it grow rapidly. I sat in this particular seat in the council of 208 to 211 and sat on the rec commission at that time, and there was a needs assessment done by a subcommittee of the commission for recreation facilities in Central Saanich at that time, and so it's been an ongoing matter through successive strat plans, 5-year strat plans of the commission, and this has received due consideration over the past year or so through the commission.
Thank you. I'll turn to Councillor Garnett next as the seconder.
Nothing to add, thank you.
Nothing to add. Okay, then I will turn to Councillor O'Keefe, then Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you. Just a question through you to staff. We kind of touched on what the communication would look like. And I think you said our regular communication channels. So is that Facebook and the website, or I guess that would be the extent of our, and just trying to get a sense of how much information we would be able to provide our citizens, so that they can fully understand what's going on and make an informed decision.
Yeah, through the chair, thank you, Councillor Keith. Just to be clear, it's council that will be making the decision, not the public. But we would be we would do a post on our website and through our Facebook account. And we would be pointing staff back to this meeting and this material for additional information. And it would be a fairly simple notice that council is considering municipal consent for this borrowing for this facility. And To provide,
And inviting them to provide feedback to council.
correct, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rintoul, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Either through you to the mayor or staff or both. What was the rationale for May 4th versus May 11th?
Originally, it was my understanding that this would be that the CRD board meeting was on May 13th, and it would need to be ready for their agenda around May 6th or 7th, and so I was trying to stick with that timing.
So, but the letter from the CRD says they need to know by May the 15th.
I'm not sure, perhaps we can ask the CRD when, in
It says
fact,
no later than May 15th.
when in fact they would prefer a decision for their agenda production.
Through the chair, I'm going to call upon Jim Morley.
Right here.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. So the next step in this process is not actually returned to the CRD board. Once we have consent of councils, we would then forward it to the inspector of municipalities to start that review process. So the inspector can take between 6 and 8 weeks to do their review. I believe that the May 15th deadline was effectively just to stay on schedule to allow that borrowing to occur, likely sometime in September or October, once we've gone through all the steps in the process.
Thank you. So, May 15th is the date that they need to know by, and so I guess I would look to, if I may through chair, to the mayor, whether or not you would find it agreeable to amend that date, only from the lens of giving Sydney residents more time to provide comment, or the town more time to communicate this decision. So, yield there.
I'm supportive of amending this to the May 11th regular council meeting.
Seconder has.
I'm not sure who the seconder was.
Second for discussion.
Yeah, I think given that we're providing this opportunity for input from the public, going from 2 weeks to 3 weeks, I think is beneficial, and it still meets the requirements as requested by CRD in their letter.
Councillor Garnett, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. As I mentioned earlier, North Saanich it was a motion passed by their council that they will be making the decision on May 4th. So if they meet on May 4th and they decide to make with non-consent, our meeting becomes a moot point. So it makes more sense for our meetings to align. So there's no influencing of decisions. We're making decisions at the same time virtually in 2 different meetings, but to me, it just makes more sense. It doesn't make any sense to add another week. And, if they agree to it, that's fine. Then we can have the discussion, but if they don't, then why are we having that discussion? Because it'll have all failed at that point. Thank you.
I'm actually just first going to turn to Councillor Duck and see whether you have a question that applies to the preceding conversation, because I know I missed you before we began speaking of a changed motion. So
I'll hold my comments pending that, but I do have comments on the amendment as well. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Mayor McNeil-Smith, I'll go back to you as the mover of the motion to further motivate, I guess, on that change.
Yeah, just actually some clarification, if you will, is that the mayor of North Saanich and also sits on the commission, and we've had some conversation, and the North Saanich didn't know when Sydney was going to. We understood when we would have the presentations, that the presentation would be to Sydney at this meeting, and the presentation would be to North Saanich, because the same staff wouldn't be doing the same presentation on the same night in 2 locations. But it wasn't necessarily understood. I couldn't say that council, while we would be having the presentation tonight, I couldn't say exactly when we would be referring it back to council. So while North Saanich has, as I understand it, passed a motion to have their presentation next Monday, at that meeting after the presentation, knowing when we are considering, they may choose to go from 1 week of allowing time for consultation to the same date of May 11th. That's still within their purview. So
you. I'm going to turn to Councillor Duck because he's had his hand up since before the last motion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and I concur. I think the May 11th is a better date. I don't think we need to have a special council meeting to address this single item when we can simply do it within a normal council meeting on May 11th. I'm in favor of this going forward for that opportunity for community to be heard, and staff indicated that this would be through online and a website presence. Is there any need or requirement for this to be published in the PNR, for example?
Through the chair to Councillor Duck, no, there's no requirement for this to be published in newspaper.
Okay, I would suggest that it might be another venue to make sure that people are aware of this, because it does have significant pros and cons to it for the community and services and costs. So I think it'd be worthwhile if we can reach out as much as we can to alert the community of this. And I look forward to hearing what they have to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will note there's a press release at the end of every council meeting which will state that we put out about what was on the topic of our council discussion. So that will go to the press. I can't imagine why they wouldn't want to run that as they typically do. So I don't know if Mr. Edwards has any more to add about that.
Thank you, Chair. We don't typically call it a press release. We do it as council highlights, and we typically only do that after council meeting, not a committee of the whole. And so I would seek council direction as to whether or not council wanted us to publish it in the newspaper. Otherwise, I would not direct staff to do so.
Okay, that changes things. Okay, I'm gonna actually first, Councillor O'Keefe, did you have your hand up to speak to the amendment? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I understand Councillor Garnett's reservations about switching to May 11th, and if North Saanich were to make a decision, then our decision becomes moot. I guess the flip side of that the way I'm looking at it is, if they do approve it on May 4th, we would still have, I'm in favor of giving our citizens more time rather than less to make up their minds. And if they happen to do it on May 4th, that would be unfortunate, but as the mayor said, there might be some flexibility. But I think it's more important in my mind to get the word out to our citizens, and I feel more comfortable, since it appears we're not doing a referendum or anything else. If I'm going to make a decision on behalf of the community on raising their tax bill, I would like to hear from them and give them every opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rintoul, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff, I don't know, are we aware whether or not North Saanich has May the 11th meeting scheduled? Their online calendar, do they show if they have a May the 11th meeting? I'm just thinking of Councillor Garnett's concern, and I'm not sure why, if they had a meeting and this was a concern they shared, that they would perhaps look to shift the schedule to May 11th as well.
I think I'm not aware if they do have a meeting scheduled for the 11th or not. Okay. They have a special council meeting and a committee of the whole scheduled for that day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, with no further discussion on that one, I'll call the question on the amendment, the referral motion going to May 11th. All in favor? Okay, that looks like that's unanimous. So now I will look for to call the question on the main motion, which is to refer it to May 11th. All in favor? Okay, looks like that carries unanimously as well. Thank you. I guess I'll just close off then. Maybe if I could make a motion arising to ask staff if they could put out a special council highlights following this committee of the whole that provides this information in the hopes that our usual methods of getting things out to the press. I can see Councillor Duck.
Yeah, I would support, I will second that motion.
Okay, thank you. Staff is moving around, so I just want to make sure. Did staff get a motion? Thank you. Okay, thank you. Our PRC and CRD people are taking off. Thank you again for coming. Oh, we're still finishing our motions. All right, thanks. You've got to head out. Thank you. Thank you. I'll wait until they vacate the room and just make sure. Okay. So staff, I was making a motion arising to ask staff to direct staff to do I can see Mr. Edwards is nodding. As special counsel highlights of this meeting.
Yes, I understand, Chair.
Thank you. And it was seconded by Mr. Duck. I don't think I need further motivation. So Mr. Duck, if you wanted to speak to it as a seconder before going to Councillor O'Keefe.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I support this going forward because I think it's an important aspect, given it can be an ARP, that our residents know the full impact of what this is, both the pros and cons. I think that's valuable, and as staff have indicated, that information will be available to them. And we'll also, I hope, include the additional information that the CRD have promised to come forward, which is the costing elements and the results of the survey or the analysis they've done, so that we have that information as well. And I think that'd be worthy for the community to be aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe, did you have?
Thank you. I'm in favor of doing a special council highlights. What I was just seeking clarity from the mover and seconder on was, is it your expectation that that would be issued as a press release, so that, or just a regular council highlights?
I was just saying just a regular council highlights, because I know that always does end up in the news, and I don't want to make a large extra amount of work, but I know it would be Miss Judson's time.
Okay.
But I think it's important enough that we should have something,
Okay.
as you've said.
Thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Edwards.
A couple of comments through you, Chair. One is I think the press release isn't necessarily any additional work to council highlights, and so I wouldn't want to confuse the meetings or the matters, and so I think it would be fine if it were to be drafted as a press release, and we encourage the PNR to or I guess the question to council would be, are we doing a press release, in which case it's up to the press as to whether or not they pick it up, or are we asking for space in the PNR to actually post it? And then I just wanted to circle back on a comment made by Councillor Duck about the additional information that we will be receiving from CRD staff. We don't currently have a project webpage for this project, and so it's easy for us to refer to all of the information and reports that have been compiled as part of this agenda, but that additional information would not become part of this agenda. It would become part of the future agenda, and so it would be difficult for us to point to that new and additional information. We can perhaps make some awareness about it in some way, shape, or form, but I think that would be a difficult thing for us to do without creating an actual web page.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'll clarify my part first was simply to make it as a press release, if that's no more work than council highlights, because I know this is something about a tax impact. I don't think we need to ask the news and try to purchase space to run this, as it's something that's news that usually runs. So I was only anticipating this going out as a typical council highlights, and then they all pick it up if it has something to do with taxes. So I'll leave it to Councillor Duck. My anticipation was not to take this under as one of our projects, or do a whole bunch of extra work on PRC's behalf in that case. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Duck to see what he had intended with that.
Thank you, Chair. And I was following up on staff's indication that out of a committee of the whole meeting, we don't normally put out council highlights. So this would be, yes, a media release specific to this topic. And in specific response to staff's, as we get that additional information, certainly it'll be in the hands of staff, and I think it's just wise that we make sure that we do let people know that we have forthcoming information on that wasn't readily available at this meeting, that we will have and can provide that once we have it in hand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Keefe, more clarity.
So I'm just, I'm wondering, did staff need us to tweak the motion more to say that, to put out a press release, or is it fine the way things are? Is that something that you kind of alluded to that you might do anyways?
Perhaps we can have the motion read back to us.
That staff be directed to put out a special council highlights.
Could,
Go ahead.
I would just add onto that as a press release. Can we do that?
Just it would be a friendly amendment to change it to media release. Go ahead, Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Just for clarification, colleagues, when we issue council highlights after a council meeting, it is a media release. It goes to the media outlets, so it's intended as a media release. It is a media release, but we call it council highlights. The media treats it as a media release. Through you, Chair, to Mr. Edwards' point, we have only put out council highlights after council meetings. The motion that we've passed to refer will actually come to council meeting next week for a vote. We're looking to move it forward, but it's still part of the process. So we typically don't, because of that step that always occurs with any business that's conducted at Committee of the Whole, we typically don't do a highlights or a media release after a Committee of the Whole meeting. We often get media interest and provide responses to media, but we don't put out a media release. And the first thing we say to the media when they do reach out after the Committee of the Whole, that this is in a process that is going to come back to council and so on. So this is a media release. My suggestion is to amend the wording that rather than a special council highlights, is that we just call it a media release.
And just further to that, thank you, Mayor, for the additional clarification, and through the chair to council, recognizing that this is a committee of the whole. If council does agree that it's their desire to push this out, I wouldn't wait until council's regular meeting to ratify that. I would just advance it immediately.
Yes, thank you. And that was the intention, was to make sure we were doing that. If we're saying we want more time to go to the public, I want to make sure that it looks, we really actually did that. So thank you for that clarity.
I'll second the amendment.
Okay,
made by the
perfect.
mayor.
Thank you. I will call the question on the amendment to the motion then. All in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Now we'll call the question on the motion itself to put out a media release. All in favor? And it's unanimous again. Thank you. That motion carries. Thank you, staff. We are now we're at 9 o'clock. We have members of the public been waiting for a very long time to do their development application, but I want to check because everyone's been sitting here so long. Are you happy to push on through, or does anybody need a bathroom break or a break? Everybody's looking at me expectantly. We're pushing on. Okay, let's move it. Okay, thank you. Okay, we have 7A, development applications. We're looking at development variance permit application for a fence on Wildflower Place. We have presentations from the applicants, the property owners, who began speaking earlier, 100 years ago, or 3 hours, whatever. They do have some presentation for us, so if you can come forward and kind of finish that.
misunderstanding
you.
earlier. So shall I start over? I guess.
You don't need to start again. We heard part of your rationale for
Yeah.
building your new fence, and then we finished at you had photos, but I would have told you we have photos
Yeah.
that you
Okay.
submitted already that are in our package. So
We have more pictures because actually, the complaint from our neighbors, so yeah, about the complaints that our neighbors feel, our fence running along their cedar hedge will kill their cedar hedge. The highest point of our fence on the rear side, so the north side, is 2 meters and 3 centimeters instead of a maximum permitted of 1 meter and 80 centimeters. We have to say, and it's the photos we wanted to show you, that their fence, the other side of their cedar hedge runs along their driveway and gets sunlight. As you can see on these photos, and here it's the north side, their edge and their driveway. It's not, we did not provide the photos at this time because we knew about their complaint this morning when they sent us a text to let us know that they were complaining about that. Their same cedar edge also runs towards the ocean along the fence of our other neighbors' fence. So it's just after that. Fence which is similar to ours and was built 2 years ago. At this location, the cedar hedge is surrounded by their garage, their edge, a shade, and the fence of our neighbors. So since this fence was built 2 years ago, it has not killed their cedar hedge. Our research tells us our fence will not kill their cedar hedge. Similar cedar hedges growing along high and solid fences can be found all throughout the town of Sydney without dying. For example, on Beaufort Road, we have the pictures. They are the same cedar hedge here, adjacent to a solid and high fence. I mean, they are just healthy, I would say. If we remove the post caps, because the other height, in fact, though the structure is a 4-foot panel by 8-foot panels by 8, and 6 by 8. The over 8, in fact, comes from the fact that between the ground and the wooden part of the panel, it's a little bit.
Maybe I'll explain this.
Yeah,
part
because I
it's-
think,
it's-
sorry about that. I think it's better for you
It's
and
more
my
hardware-like,
yeah.
yes. If we remove the post caps on our rear yard fence, so those are the caps on the post on the north side, our top rail height will range from less than 1.8 meters on the wildflower side. So the top edge of the fence is less than 1.8 meters, and it goes up to 1.93 meters at the highest part of the fence,
rear
facing the
side.
neighbors on the north side. So if we remove the tops on the posts, it goes from just below the requirement to 1.93 meters.
So then,
Removing from zero on the wildflower side, and the 13 centimeters on the other end is not going to make any difference for the cedar hedge, which will not die anyways.
were we clear?
They have a similar fence next door behind our neighbor's house, which was built at the same time. That fence has been there for 2 years, and it's the same fence as ours, and it has not killed the hedge. So their argument that it's going to kill the hedge in a few years is not valid. And they also, in part of their fence, they have a shed that's higher than the fence. So it blocks the tree on the one side and it blocks a cedar tree on the other side. And again, those cedars have not died either. So they now have the fence and the shed beside them. And the shed has been there for, I would guess, 20 years.
I think we should show that. It shows better. In fact, that's the continuity of their hedge, cedar hedge. Our lot is here. Their hedge, our fence, and that's the fence built 2 years ago with the same cedar hedge, and it's in between their garage and the fence. It was built 2 years ago. On our side, there is our fence, their hedge, and it's their driveway. It gets, our neighbors, when their hedge continue towards here, they have no sun on both sides, and the hedge is still alive. So I don't get the point of their complaint. That's it. Thank you for your intention.
Thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
My apologies. Yeah, thank you for your presentation, your additional comments. At this point in time, we have public participation, but the public is not here, and I don't see anybody online. So I will skip past the public participation and go to our staff who have a report. I look to staff for that. Thank you. You may sit down. There may be questions for you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. As has been indicated, this is a development variance application to legalize the existing height of a fence in the front yard, being the south lot line adjacent to Amherst Avenue. Also to legalize the existing height of a fence on the exterior side yard, which is the west lot line adjacent to Wildflower Place. And also to legalize the height of the fence in the rear yard, which is the north lot line adjacent to the neighboring property, which was just discussed by the applicant. Information is in the staff report, and I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look to my colleagues for questions. Go ahead, Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff. In the event that the variance request was denied, what would be the protocol or action that would be taken?
Through the chair, in that event, staff would communicate to the applicant that the fence would have to be reduced in height to meet the bylaw requirements. Just to give you an indication, I know we've all been using metric for decades in Canada, but just to be clear, 1.2 meters equals 3 foot 11. So the fence that is installed in the front yard has a height of 1.39 meters, which is about 4 foot 6 inches. So that's an increase of 7 inches on the south lot line fence. The fence in the rear yard, the bylaw allows 1.8 meters, which is 5 foot 11. The highest point, as was just described by the applicant, is 2.03 meters, which is approximately 6 foot 7. So there's 8 inches difference there. And they said that's to the top of the post caps, not the solid panel. The height of the existing fence in the exterior side yard, the bylaw allows 1.2 meters, which is about 3 foot 11. And the fence that's there is 1.42 meters, which is about 4 foot 7. So again, 8 inches above what the bylaw allows to the top of the post caps. So yeah, if the variance is denied, then staff would communicate with the applicant to let them know that they must reduce the height of the fence to comply with the bylaw, and then would ask them to contact us to arrange an inspection to ensure that that's done. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you. A question is, sorry, to the applicants. You indicated that the neighbor to the east of you has a fence like yours along that same cedar hedge. Are you indicating that the height of that fence is also 2.3 meters?
No, it is not. They're 4 foot panels, so 4 foot high, but they're raised quite a ways off the ground. So I don't have an exact measurement for you, but 8 inches.
That's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. I just wanted to know if it was the same, and you've indicated it's not.
No,
Thank you.
okay.
I have another question through to staff, or sorry, just, it's a comment, is we can consider the three variances separately if we wish.
Okay, Councillor Rintoul and then Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the applicants. I know in the staff report it talks a little bit about timelines of when various legs of the fence were built. Are you aware, I know some of it perhaps you did yourselves, or was there a contractor involved in any of the stages of fencing that you're aware of?
Through the chair, thank you for your question, sir. When we bought the home, because it was built by Vidalin Homes, when we bought the home, we asked the developer, the builder, to build us the fence. So when we took possession of the house, he had built a fence along Amherst Avenue.
It was an addendum to our contract.
Right, so it was included with the purchase of the home. So Dave Vidalin had his contractor built that section of fence. We took possession of the home. We decided to build the additional fence. We hired the same contractor to build the additional fence.
And we didn't know, I guess. That's it.
Yeah, so I guess what I find interesting is that the fence wouldn't have been built to the code, to the bylaw requirements, and so I think, is that a conversation you've had with the builder who contracted the initial fence builder?
No?
No, not at all. He didn't mention anything about
No.
building code or anything.
Okay, it's unfortunate, because you're obviously
Yeah.
Yes.
left with a fence that,
Mm.
you know, the neighbor's hedge in that story is immaterial. What's being requested here is a variance to the bylaw on the height, so it's all about the height of the fence.
Mhm.
And,
Right.
in that you had a contractor do the work, I would suggest, you know, they may well be the ones liable to carry the change if that's what's required, but it's unfortunate that you're in this situation and that
Thank
the
you.
contractor didn't follow the bylaws.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, Councillor O'Keefe, go ahead.
Actually, I'm okay,
You're
Councillor.
okay?
Yep.
Okay. Then I guess I will go ahead. So I think Councillor Rintoul kind of, you got the same contractor for both properties, and it sounds like you moved in and kind of said, they have the fence, just continue the same fence, give us what they had. So then my question, I just want to get, and I'm trying to get the timeline straight too, I guess through the staff, that this came to staff's attention because it was originally at the failing to have a permit for any fence whatsoever. It wasn't that, hey, their fence is too high. That was what staff checked later, and we're like, oh, this is too high, you need a variance. But initially this came to staff's attention because the fence was being built without prior permit in an ESA. And so people were wondering if they had permission, because people pay close attention to things that happen in the ESA. I guess for public who might hear that the only thing that could happen, we would not be, there's no eventuality where we say, because they didn't have a permit to build this fence in an ESA in the first place, yank the whole fence up. The only possible thing that we would be saying to these people tonight would be, make your fence shorter. That's correct.
That's right. Fences are permitted on the property lines here, so they can build a fence, a property owner can build a fence that complies with the bylaw. In the environmentally sensitive DP areas, development permit areas, they do need a permit, but that's done in-house by staff. It doesn't come to council for approval. That permit's for altering the land in that environmentally sensitive area. So as long as what's proposed conforms to the design guidelines and meets the bylaw, the permit would be issued. It would be a rare situation for council to require that a whole fence be removed and that no new fence be put in when the bylaw allows fences on property lines. So.
Thank you. And my rationale for going into further detail is we have had properties that have built things in the past in an ESA and then had to kind of worry about it as a council about if we had people pull things out just because it wasn't built to spec, does that cause more damage? And so I would just try to make it clear for members of the public who are being vigilant about what gets built in an ESA without, this wouldn't have come to council. This is something that staff would have looked at whether there was damage to the environment. And if there's no damage to the environment, this is only about a fence height, and staff is kind of, will keep abreast of that, but that would not come back before council necessarily. No. I can see staff is shaking their head. Thank you. And I guess so the follow, did staff look into this when this came forward? The permit history for the neighboring property, if it was done with the same contractor, so the same contractor did apply for a permit for the other property and then failed to apply for a permit for this one?
Sorry, by their property, you mean the one to the east?
The
on
one to the
Amherst,
east,
the
yeah.
other new house there? Yeah, that fence is also not compliant with the zoning bylaw and also needs a variance application, so we are working with that, the developer and the owner there to get them to apply to legalize their fence height as well.
Okay, thank you. That kind of circles, that makes a lot more sense than that they left out one neighbor. Okay, thank you. Mr. Duck, online, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And just questions, if I can, through the applicants. Given there was an existing cedar hedge fence line there and provides that fencing, natural fencing, is there a reason you put in a fence? And secondly, is there a reason why you put it higher than the existing fences you've got on the other perimeter parts of the property?
Go ahead.
Actually, no, there is no reason. We did not. The fact is that the panels of the fence are 4 feet on Wildflower and Amherst by 8 feet wide, 8 foot wide. And on the rear side, so the north side, the panels are 6 foot high by 8 foot wide. And in fact, the over height comes from the post, which is on top of the rail. The post is already 5 inches and more. And because of the structure, the fence is made from wood at the bottom. And our contractor said that it could not be right to the ground, but a little bit higher from the ground. So we didn't know. In fact, this over height, we arrived here 2-3 months ago. We measured and we realized that, well, yes, it is over height. That's it. We didn't know. Am I forgetting something?
No, I think you're good.
Yeah. Voilà.
Thank you. And if I could ask a further question through to staff. My understanding, staff, through any adjustments on the north side fence line, it's simply shortening the posts, topping the posts versus down to the fence line of the panels would accomplish this height adjustment?
Through the chair, I don't think just taking the top off that, I think the applicant indicated removing the caps would drop the height to 1.93. I'm looking at them, they're nodding, yes, so 1.93 meters, that is still too tall. The bylaw allows a maximum height of 1.8 meters. So, excuse me, it would have to be further reduced. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That's my questions.
Thank you. I'll look for a recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation that owners and tenants in occupation of property within 75 meters, 246 feet of 10181 Wildflower Place be notified regarding development variance application number DV 1003391 to retroactively allow an increase to the maximum allowable fence height in the front, exterior, side, and rear yards of the subject property, and that any written correspondence received be forwarded to council at the time of consideration of approval of the variance.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Mayor McNeil-Smith, thank you. All right. Does the mover wish to motivate?
Yeah, I would just state that this just provides an opportunity for neighbors to comment, and comments of the nature that it creates shade for a hedge. That's not what this is about. It's about the height of the fence, pure and simple. And so I think it's, at least in my mind, something that can be addressed if there's not a broader concern from your neighbors, and it's part of the process. It doesn't mean council would approve it. It just gives your neighbors an opportunity to provide feedback and for council to revisit this issue. So I'll pause there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Seconder?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate that this is our normal process for a variance application. Is that while we did ask questions and council committee could have taken the decision that would go to council to deny one, two, or all three of the variances, we've chosen to seek input from your neighbors, which is our normal process if we want to go forward from this evening. And so thank you for your correspondence, for your photographs that you provided to date. Thank you for presenting and taking some questions this evening. My suggestion would be that this will be coming back with any input from the neighbors at a later meeting. You're free or welcome to submit those additional photos. That was difficult for us to see tonight. I think we understood the intent of what you were trying to portray, but you do have the opportunity to submit those. That would go to the next agenda. And I just want to comment for the neighbor who did submit correspondence today, the council was able to review prior to the meeting. We do want to acknowledge receiving that, but since we're not taking the decision this evening, that correspondence in itself will come back along with any other correspondence to that next meeting as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Garnett, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you to the homeowners for coming in today and describing the situation and for answering questions from committee. I have a couple of points or comments I would like to make, and one is I'm not 100% certain that the fencing suits the neighborhood based on my walk around the neighborhood of many years. It's a very natural, soft-scaped area, but you know it is allowed in terms of having fencing. And just so you know, we don't have off-leash dog beaches in Sydney, so if there are people running, they're not supposed to be doing that. Yeah, but I know you're new here, that's a no-no for sure. I guess when I read your letter, the builder didn't know that a permit was required, nor the subcontractor, and we didn't know either. And I get it. I purchased a home, and that was part of my agreement. And it wasn't the fence was already there. It was to close it off for my dogs and to put gates in. And you know, I didn't know the rules. I don't know. I mean, I know the rules in my community, but I didn't measure it and make sure they did the job. You rely on them to do their job properly. And so, what I'm struggling with in this is not you, because you've done nothing wrong, as Councillor Rintoul has clearly stated. Am I to believe that a developer and a contractor don't know the rules of Sydney, don't know they need a permit? I don't believe that. I don't know what happened here. It's been happening more and more. It's very frustrating to me because there seems to be a complete lack, in my opinion, a lack of professionalism and a lack of respect for the Town of Sydney guidelines. And we're getting this come here and ask for forgiveness after the fact, and it's very, very frustrating. And it's got to be frustrating for you because you walk into a situation and you don't know the rules, and you assume that as professionals they're doing their job properly and they're doing their due diligence. And here we are, and this is happening way too often. So it's just more of a comment, not to you, but at large, that somehow we need to rein this in, because now we have people that are being impacted, and others have as well, negatively, based on people not doing their job properly. So, but I'm happy to support the motion going forward to hear from your neighbors. They spoke to the variances that were requested in the first place, so I'm sure we'll get a letter or two. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe, go ahead.
Thank you. I would have been happy at this point to deny the variance, but I'll support going forward to hear from the neighbors. I'm sympathetic to the homeowners, and I think, you know, if council ultimately decides to deny the variance, I'd be going back to the developer and saying, hey, you put me in a tough position here, you need to come and fix this. Because I am concerned about the variances coming after the fact, and sometimes there's good reasons for it based on the geography or topography of a particular lot. And we've seen instances like that where we've allowed variances. And sometimes they're relatively minor. But in this case, 7 inches, 8 inches, I think those are pretty significant variances. And so, you know, my initial inclination is that I don't think we should be allowing that just because a developer didn't do what they should have done. But for the time being, fine to let it go through to the next stage and see what, if we get any other feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I'll just add my comments that in the past when people have had this notification go out, whether they were doing commercial or a developer or resident, sometimes they spoke to their neighbors just to kind of give some basis for the notice that they get unexpectedly for the town. If you feel comfortable speaking to your neighbors about this, you are more than welcome to kind of give your neighbors your side of the story or whatever to help them in their feedback. If you don't feel comfortable with that, that's okay. But just so you understand that the process is part of, it is not, it's difficult to move into a new neighborhood and then be a controversy. And when this application, this development initially came forward, we got a lot of attention from the neighborhood because it was a very different subdivision in what is a soft-scaped area right next to a very public access trail that a lot of people go past. And so making sure that you're being off to a good start in the neighborhood and knowing that if your neighbors feel that a reasonable person moving into a new residence and that the developers may have been the ones that are on the hook for this, or that this is something you could be left with, and whether that's an understandable situation reasonable people could be in, and how this is helping your neighborhood maintain its enjoyment of the surrounding area. These are all kind of important factors. And also, if people with off-leash dogs are there, you are always free to report that to the bylaw officers because there's no off-leash in the ESA.
Can I say that?
So
There were 2 bylaw trucks there today, so thank you for that.
there you go.
Yeah. And
I
keep
will
going.
now call the question. All in favor of moving this forward to notification? That's all in favor, unanimous. Thank you. Thank you for staying here so late.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for your time.
Right. The final issue, now that our residents are prepared to leave, they finished speaking to staff. We have a staff report on the implementation of 4-way stops on Bevan Avenue, and we have a report from our Director of Engineering, Mr. Murphy. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and Chair. I would say good night, Chair and Council, but that might cause confusion. I'll start by saying we're welcome to defer this item to a future meeting. There's no urgency on it. Just if it's not a slam dunk and there's going to be a lot of discussion, feel that's. But just to introduce it, proposing to implement 4-way stops on Bevan Avenue at 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. This is something we discussed during the capital budget process, so there are some funds available. We had, originally the item had funds for engineering traffic consultant study, and which we decided would be best to not spend those funds and just bring forward the recommendation internally. So it's not a scientific or fully studied recommendation. It's a recommendation based on observations and general experience, and also the success of implementing 4-way stops on Sydney Avenue. And so with the idea of mirroring that across the way on Bevan Ave, for all the purposes of traffic calming, to have four-way stops that requires everyone to stop in all directions. And so therefore traffic safety and also pedestrian safety through a more controlled crossing on the edge of the downtown core. And so happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'd look to committee. Do we have any questions for staff? Councillor O'Keefe, go ahead.
Thanks. So just clarifying my understanding from questions that we sent to staff, I sent to staff earlier today, and as Mr. Murphy mentioned in his comments, there are not necessarily any data on this, but general observations. I'm trying to remember if we ever, I don't recall receiving any letters from the community. Do you recall, or?
Through the chair to Councillor O'Keefe. So I haven't received anything in my number of months, but my understanding is the engineering manager over the last couple of years has received phone calls or emails with some concerns. That certainly not an overwhelming number or anything like that. And again, the recommendation is mostly just based on observations, and you know, it appears to be the right move for the street, but we don't have a full thorough analysis to back that up.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Duck, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. If I can, through to staff. Given the consideration for Sydney and Bevan for traffic calming and pedestrian safety, is there any consideration for the same thought for Beacon?
Through the chair to Councillor Duck. So nothing currently contemplated for any changes to Beacon Avenue. I believe the most recent downtown traffic study, I'm not sure what year that was done. It was a few years ago. I don't believe there were any recommendations for any changes at this time, and there isn't anything being contemplated for Beacon Ave.
I would follow up then. It seems odd that we would be concerned with the pedestrians and traffic on the two outside streets of our downtown area, not the main street, which has considerably more pedestrian traffic and movement on that road. And so if we are looking to do this on Bevan, I would say we better have a good rationale why we're not doing it on Beacon for similar reasons. Thank you.
Okay, I will look for a motion. If there's no further questions. Mayor McNeil-Smith, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Edwards, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I may stand corrected on this one, but I do believe there are more stops on Beacon than there are on Bevan as it currently stands. And I do know that we have received letters as indicated about requests for specific four-way stops on Bevan. In particular, Bevan and 2nd, and I think it was Bevan and 5th were the ones that come to mind for.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Mayor McNeil-Smith, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'll move the staff recommendation that staff proceed with the installation of new four-way stops at the intersections of Bevan Avenue and 2nd Street, 3rd Street, and 4th Street, and that it be funded from the approved 2026 capital budget of $10,000.
Second.
I'll motivate very briefly. I'm in full support of it, and quite frankly, I won't repeat because I think it's very well worded in the staff report under the sections of pedestrian safety and traffic calming, sightline and operational considerations, and consistency with Sydney Avenue implementation. I've received questions from numerous members of the public. When are we going to do on Bevan what we've done on Sydney Avenue?
Seconder, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, similar to the mayor, it makes sense to have the consistency, and I understand what Councillor Duck's saying about having Beacon, but as to staff's point, I think there's already a four-way stop at third, if I'm not mistaken, or second. Just to have that consistency with Sydney Avenue and you know, there are, and we have had multiple letters, maybe not recently, but 8 years worth. I know that we've had people write letters in and emails. I've read them personally many times. There is a lot more concern around Bevan and Fifth for sure. People want a set of lights there. I've heard that a lot. But yeah, no, it's an area where, yeah, I mean, if you walk there fairly regularly, and I do, there are sightline and visibility issues for pedestrians that are crossing north and south across all three of those intersections on Bevan, and people don't see people till the last second, and so that's when you get people getting frightened and worried they're going to get hit, and it's legitimate. It's legitimate. It's in some of those intersections where the cars parked. You should be cautious when you're crossing a crosswalk and always having that eye contact with the driver. But what I've noticed lately is that people are constantly looking for driving or parking spots, and so they're not necessarily looking for pedestrians. So if this is a way to have people slow down as they're approaching intersections and then having to stop, then that just is an added layer of safety. So I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm not in support of this. I would have liked to see that we have some data built up on this, or, I've also been on here for 8 years. I don't recall a letter or any significant amount of letters about traffic on Bevan. I do recall Bevan and Fifth being problematic, and even talk about having a traffic light there. So anecdotal information, there's other things that we've had, we get requests for to change, and I don't think we should be leaping to make changes and find things for staff to do and spend money unless there's a documented hazard there. I don't recall seeing it show up in the traffic reports that the RCMP provide. So for me, I don't see the evidence to support another expenditure and to inhibit the flow of traffic along Bevan. So I won't support it. Thank you.
Nobody else? Councillor Duck, is your hand still up, or is that up again?
It is up again.
It's up again. Okay, I'll turn to you.
I will be supporting this motion, and back to staff, there are actually between Fifth and First a single stop on Bevan and a single stop on Beacon. The one at Beacon is at second, the one on Bevan is at first. So the same number of stops currently exist on both those streets. There's a roundabout at the bottom of Bevan, which doesn't require a stop. So I will, if we're going ahead with this on Bevan, I will be seeking to see the same happen on Beacon for the same reasons of traffic calming. We've got more pedestrians there than we do on either the Beacon or Sydney. And I will remind one of my colleagues who tried to cross that street just on Saturday was caught with that same problem of the traffic was totally looking for getting through the intersection and not looking for pedestrians. So I will be supporting this and looking forward to a similar motion on Beacon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Duck. I will be supporting this motion as well. I think the rationale for prioritizing this over Beacon at this time, the fact that staff doesn't have this for Beacon at this time, is partly this is a wider street where, unlike Beacon, where pedestrian traffic has been prioritized with mid-block crossings all along it, this one has not, and people are kind of using it as a throughway instead of Beacon, where you're anticipating additional pedestrians. I've never had a problem trying to pass on my daily route to work Beacon Avenue at the locations that don't have a stop sign on Beacon, but these locations are always problematic because it's wider. It's so much harder for people to see pedestrians. If we go forward with the transit hub, having traffic being calmed before it reaches that area and anticipating more stops, then rather that this is another way to sneak past the traffic on Beacon might be another way to do it. There's just a lot of parking there on the street that seems to be harder to see around. There's a lot of traffic coming and go and doing drop-offs because of the lab there. I don't usually, if I'm trying to cross Beacon, because the way it's been designed, I don't have to walk partway into the intersection and cautiously peer around the SUV that's parked there in order to see. But when I'm trying to cross Bevan, I do almost every time. The drivers themselves can't see pedestrians either, and a lot of the time people are already treating all of those intersections as though they are four-way stops and simply stop, and then it's a bit of a snarl to traffic. So I think, as with the rationale we had on Sydney White, which is that people treat them that way anyway, and it makes it more predictable for people to simply anticipate they're coming to a four-way stop. I think making these four-way stops, which is what people expect there, especially given the volume of pedestrians that are going through those intersections, I think that just makes sense, and I don't think it needs to be tied to further pedestrian improvements. Thank you, and not seeing any second-time speakers, I will call the question on this motion. And we have, Councillor O'Keefe, I hadn't called opposed yet, but Councillor O'Keefe is the one opposed. Everyone else was in favor. All right. Councillor Duck, did you wish to make your motion now, or were you simply kind of putting that out there to staff for further consideration later?
I will put it out there, given the length of this meeting, put it out there for further consideration later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And in that case, I will note that there is nothing further on our agenda, and I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved, second?
Second.
All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Good night.